Alright, you and I are about to dive into a world where a single awakening can change everything. The instructor recounts the legend of Gaia, blessing the weak with 4 elements, filling the hall with a desperate hope. Students awaken their magic one by one. Neil shocks everyone by pulling 2 elements, and the nobles start cheering loudly. Then all eyes turn to Louie. Nothing happens, and he feels a mental weight like an unseen chain is crushing his will. He screams, breaks free, and 4 colors rush toward him. Yet every time he reaches out, the lights slip away. The instructor just smirks. Now watch this part carefully. The instructor's trap is set, but Louie shatters the tile and exposes the hidden orb as a massive vortex erupts. Even the principal has to step in because whatever is waking up inside Louie is definitely not normal. And when the power finally bursts, ice and wind explode, turning the entire temple into a frozen nightmare. It all started one morning with a massive crowd of applicants gathering at the gates of Candria Arcanist Academy. Louie isn't surprised at all. He knew the Empire's top magic school would draw this much attention. Suddenly, someone screams his name. He turns to find his parents gasping for air, complaining that he left them in the dust while racing to the gates. Worried sick, his mother Laciella asks if he has his identification. She warns him to hide his hair color, but he promises he's fully equipped with his ID and hair dye. However, she's still very anxious, suggesting he skip the exam. She's heard applicants die during these tests and fears someone might target him for his unique hair. His father Julian calmly places a hand on her shoulder, telling her magic is the only way to solve Louis's problems. He also explains that this is the only academy in the Northern Empire where commoners are allowed to take the exam. Candria Academy is a legendary institution founded by the royals and is one of the 10 great academies where the Empire's strongest grandmasters teach. Over the last decade, even graduates with no noble blood have risen to become powerful guardians of the realm. Because of that, Julian believes it's the perfect environment for Louis to finally master his magic, and Louis confirms that he's right before telling his mother with burning determination that he must become a grandmaster to protect the orphanage from the church's control. Hearing this, Laciella freezes, suddenly sobbing and calling herself a terrible mother for letting him worry about the facility while he's struggling with a magical rampage. Julian comforts her, reminding her that she's already doing a hero's job by taking care of so many children. Louis thanks her, knowing she's the only reason he's alive. See, in his past life, he dreamt of being the world's strongest warrior, but that was impossible. Severe asthma meant he couldn't even breathe without the help of a heavy respirator. His parents grew to hate him for the medical costs, yet his passion for martial arts never actually died. Soon that obsession bore fruit as he became a brilliant scholar, pioneering new theories in the world of martial arts. His research literally changed the fighting industry and brought ancient martial arts back to life. But things went south when a rival scholar stole his thesis and accused him of being the thief. Even though he was too sick to steal anything, his parents gave up on him and pulled his respirator plug. You and I can feel his pain here. In his final moments, he prayed for a healthy body and a loving family, wishing for a real life before passing on. In the year 90 of the Saint calendar, he was reborn in Montia. The first thing he saw was Laciella's worried face as she noticed his strange, dual-colored hair and eyes. As he wondered where he was, Laciella feared the baby might bring disaster to the facility. But she couldn't leave him behind. She named him Louie, and he felt a deep peace knowing his wishes for a family had finally come true. Back in the present, a random noble calls Laciella a commoner and shoves her hard to the ground, leaving Julian and Louis in total shock. They rush to her side, but the bully just mocks them, sneering that a lowly commoner like Louis is delusional for dreaming of becoming a grandmaster. This completely triggers Louis, so when the bullies keep insulting them, he stands up with pure vengeance in his eyes, ready to throw down. But Julian holds him back, telling him to stay focused. Laciella reminds him of his promise not to cause trouble, leaving him speechless. He finally calms down and apologizes to his mom. But you and I know those noble brutes are about to regret everything. Alright, you and I are heading back in as they grab their numbers. As they leave, knights start shouting for everyone to clear a path because Lord Cain is finally arriving. In walks Cain, the Oranka family heir, looking so charming and sparkly that the crowd is completely dazed by him. Louis glares at the bullies and Cain, swearing that he's going to show these nobles who's really in charge here. Seeing Laciella get anxious, he holds her hand and promises he'll definitely pass, even vowing that he'll become a legendary grandmaster. That bold claim catches Cain's attention while the bullies nearby just keep laughing and making fun of the boy. Louis sprints forward, vowing that in this life, he'll become the absolute strongest to protect those he holds dear. Watching him go, Laciella asks Julian if Louis can really do it since only 20 to 30 people pass annually. With 20,000 applicants this year, Julian says not to worry because Louis is the most stubborn guy around. Once he sets his mind on a goal, he just charges ahead without giving a damn what other people think. He reminds her that their job as family is to support him, and she replies that he's totally right. Meanwhile, Louie reaches the exam hall and notices that just about everyone standing around is much older than him. Suddenly, the supervisor and academy principal, Aronian, steps up to announce that the entrance exam is officially starting now. As suited officials line up, Louie thinks back to how the ranks work in this world of martial arcanists. Those who practice these arcane martial arts are ranked into 6 specific categories based on their overall power level. It goes from Saint at the top, followed by Sage and Grandmaster. Since that's the 3rd highest rank, it's considered the world's privileged elite. Principal Aronian explains the first test. Climb the stairs guarded by seniors to reach the passes waiting behind them. There are only 1,000 passes total, and you need one to even qualify for the next part of the test. Finally, he says the exam ends once the passes run out, and then he tells them to begin the test. Some of the examinees think this first part is going to be a total piece of cake. They rush one of the seniors, but he releases a terrifying aura while welcoming them all to absolute hell. He then slams down a massive magical force field that forces everyone to stop dead in their tracks. They're knocked out instantly and disqualified. As the crowd panics, someone recognizes the senior as the elite Lord Sheath. He's the son of the finance minister and was the top scorer in the previous year's entrance exam. Now pay attention here. Louie steps forward to tell everyone that Sheath is just using his aura to intimidate anyone with a weak will. Louie stands directly in front of Sheath, ready to face him. Sheath mocks him for having guts but says there's no place for commoners here, making Louie see red. Vowing to make Louie kneel, he unleashes a wave of aura so intense the other examinees start coughing their guts out. But Louie doesn't flinch. He thinks of all his hard training and stays perfectly confident in his own abilities. When Sheath fires a magic blast, he dodges it and charges straight ahead with a tightly clenched fist. You and I both saw that coming, right? He shocks the crowd by pulling off a clever feint without using any magic at all. As Louie grabs his exam pass, a completely furious Sheath tries to throw a heavy punch at his face. Louie blocks it with his bare hands, leaving Sheath stunned that a commoner could counter him without using magic. Principal Aronian steps in to stop the fight, reminding Sheath that the academy treats everyone as equals, regardless of status. After the nobles bow, Aronian congratulates Louie but mentions his unique hair color is a bit concerning to him. Louie is stunned, but when Aronian starts questioning his eye color too, he quickly makes them gray to hide the truth. However, the principal isn't fooled, but he promises to prepare a special potion to hide Louie's traits if he gets admitted. Louie suspects Aronian is up to something, but he knows passing the entrance exam has to come first. He simply tells the principal he's going to get ready for the second phase of the test. As he walks away, Sheath fumes, wondering why the principal would ever protect a mere commoner like that. Boiling with pure rage, he swears that he'll never forget the name Louie as long as he lives. Much later, the examinees who passed the first test arrive at the academy's second training ground to wait for the next phase. So what do you and I take from this? With almost no commoners left, the real battle against the elite is starting. Just then, alright, stick with me. As Sheath bumps into Louie with his squad, he warns that no one will save him during their next clash. But at first, Louie is unfazed. But when one lackey claims the principal saved him from disqualification, he just smirks and calls the whole group a bunch of total idiots. As Sheath glares him down, Louie tells them straight up that the Grandmaster has much better judgment than they do. Sheath is so triggered he threatens a knockout, but Louie just baits him further with a cool, nonchalant smile on his face. Now pay attention, because Sheath is seeing red. He tries to land a punch, but Louie counters with a two-finger technique, leaving his opponent completely frozen in place. Louie reveals the move is called Meridian Severance, then sends him flying with a deadly spiral point strike, leaving those two minions in a state of absolute shock. Sheath slams into the ground so hard it grabs everyone's attention, and he struggles just to catch his breath after that impact. As his buddies check in, he groans that he can't feel or move his arm properly, swearing to report Louie for using some kind of illegal poison on him. Louie denies the poison claim, explaining it's pure martial arts, and admits that while his mom asked him to hold back, he's finally being pushed. Preparing another strike, he tells Sheath that the only people who should hit others are the ones who are ready to be hit back. But Cain steps in, reminding him he'll get disqualified if he keeps this up while they are in the middle of an exam. As Louie walks away, the goons start screaming at Cain for interfering, so he reminds them exactly who he is, making them shiver in pure terror. Sheath decides to leave, but mutters that commoners and nobles are both nothing but trash. Watching them leave from the wall he is resting on, Louie concludes that all these nobles are essentially the same as they use their status to do whatever they want. Cain approaches, commending his strength and courage before offering him a spot on his team for the upcoming tests. However, a mob of fangirls interrupts, begging to team up with Cain, and soon the crowd swarms him with everyone asking to be his teammate. One examinee watches in confusion, asking his friend how Lord Cain is getting so much attention when he's still so young. His buddy explains that he's the young master of the sage Oranka family, meaning anyone who teams up with him is basically guaranteed to pass. Louie gets curious, but suddenly the principal appears in a flash of light, congratulating the students on passing the test of will. He reveals that the next challenge is the power test, and flicks his finger toward the remaining group of examinees. A glowing mark suddenly appears on the bodies of every single participant. Most examinees have no clue what it is, but Cain quickly identifies the symbol as a mark of the Earth attribute. Suddenly, everyone gets pulled toward the ground as their bodies become incredibly heavy under an intense weight. Aronian activates a massive magic circle and announces the second exam requires them to fight on stage while under the influence of Earth magic. Struggling against the massive gravitational pull, some examinees complain that fighting in this condition is absolutely impossible, but one points out that someone is walking around like it's nothing. You saw that, right? While everyone else is pinned down, Louie is casually strolling onto the stage like gravity doesn't even exist, leaving everyone there completely baffled. Aronian congratulates him for being first again. Louie just smiles while looking down at the Earth magic strings that completely failed to hold him back. Cain can't believe it, because even after 3 years of master-level training, he can barely even stand up. As others struggle, Aronian declares only those currently standing can continue, then uses magic to create a whole collection of weapons for them to choose from. Louie immediately grabs one of the swords and swings it around to test the weight. As the candidates struggle with their weapons, Aronian warns them that anyone who steps off the stage is disqualified on the spot. The exam begins, and he orders the officials to release the bound slimes before vanishing into thin air. After he leaves, the examinees wonder what on earth bound slimes are, but Louie notices something falling from the sky above them. When the slimes land, it's revealed that you get 1 point for blocking, 2 points for dodging, and 5 points for successfully defeating one. Aronian explains that their rank depends on these points, and only the top 100 candidates will advance to the third test. Some examinees think the slimes will be easy since they're just low-level monsters that look pretty dumb. But when one kid charges a slime, it suddenly launches itself forward and completely destroys his face. The monster rips through another victim before charging the group. Trust me, you and I are about to see things get very bloody. Alright, you and I are about to watch this battlefield turn into a total playground for these slimes as they swarm the examinees. Candidates are getting wiped out left and right, but a few skilled ones manage to evade the slime onslaught. The supervisors are awarding points, while noting that this year's lineup features young masters from the legendary sage families. That is the Oranka and Durham houses. They are watching Cain and a fierce red-headed warrior, betting that a brand new record is about to be set. Another examiner points out the talented commoners in the mix, asking Aronian if his earlier friend is one of them. Aronian expects Louie to show off something incredible, but the supervisor notes the kid hasn't even moved an inch. While Louie just stands there in the middle of the chaos, a struggling candidate demands to know what he is doing. An arrogant noble starts trash-talking, claiming this pathetic commoner just cannot keep up with the slime's speed. Since Louie is still dead still, the noble bets he is about to be knocked out of the exam. Now watch this, a slime launches itself directly at the back of Louie's head at point-blank range. Louie dodges with ease, and while another candidate manages to jump away, that arrogant noble gets absolutely crushed by the high-speed impact before he can react. As his teammate lies face down in the dirt, the blonde examinee freezes in pure disbelief, because he was certain Louie could not possibly dodge something that fast. Having missed its primary target, the slime goes on a wild rampage, taking out several other competitors in its path. When Louie glances to his side, he sees 3 more super-fast slimes charging straight for his position. The blonde candidate smirks, thinking this is the end. But Louie stays calm and closes his eyes to prepare a counter. A while back, Louie was training in the frozen mountains and asked a group of adventurers to pelt him with heavy rocks. The adventurers were baffled, warning him it was dangerous, but Louie insisted he needed to test a specific theory. Once he took his stance, they told him to get ready to move. But when those rocks flew at him, he did not move at all, choosing to stare them down with intense focus instead. In his past life, he had trained to send data instantly from his brain's parietal line to his cerebellum. He knew if he could master that instant reaction, he could handle literally any attack thrown his way. As the rocks closed in, his body surged with aura, and he performed lightning-fast mental calculations to dodge every single one. The adventurers were absolutely blown away, singing his praises after witnessing such an impossible display. They rushed over, begging for the secret. So he revealed the name of his new technique, void combat calculation. When they asked for more details, he explained it as a skill that perfectly predicts the outcome of any fight. Back in the present, you and I are watching those slimes close in on Louie at incredible speeds. He locks eyes with them, complex formulas flooding his mind as he maps out their coming trajectory. Suddenly, 4 slimes strike from every single direction at once, but he remains cool because his math proves these slimes only move in straight lines despite their insane power. He calculates their bounce angles and speed, predicting their path perfectly while pulling off some stylish moves to dodge all 4 slimes with total ease. With 8 points secured from his evasive maneuvers, he goes on the offensive, unleashing a sword slash that vaporizes all 4 slimes in a single strike. Cain stares in shock while the supervisors realize this kid's perception matches that of a high-grade fighter. Cain grins, realizing Louie uses special combat techniques, and decides he is going to team up with him no matter what. Just then, Louie spots another slime charging in, clearly looking for some payback for its fallen friends. He confidently declares that he is about to add 5 more points to his total. But as he takes his stance, Cain interrupts with a sword pierce to steal the kill, making Louie pretty furious. Cain just laughs it off, showing off the slime kebab on his blade while claiming he did not actually steal anything directly from Louie. He flicks his sword, slicing the slime clean in half in mid-air. As the remains land near the other examinees, he tells Louie he actually stole the points from them. With a confident smirk, he introduces himself and invites Louie to join him in poaching points from the others. Louie does not look impressed, so Cain proposes a competition to see who is really the best. Stick around to see who wins. Alright, you and I are about to watch Cain challenge Louie to show his full power. Louie just smiles, applauding his confidence before finally agreeing to give him exactly what he asked for. Sword in hand, Louie stands behind Cain and promises to reveal his true strength, stipulating that the loser of this contest must obey the winner's every command. Louie drops into a fighting stance. Cain smiles and accepts the terms, noting that he's the first person brave enough to actually make demands of him. As slimes begin to swarm, Sheath's minions watch from the shadows, realizing the chaos of the battlefield is the perfect cover for their mission. After a slime streaks past them, they draw their bows and fire a volley of arrows directly at Cain and Louie. As a slime lunges at them, Louie slices it in 2 only to find 3 arrows inches away from his face. The loud impact alerts Cain, while the bullies celebrate, convinced they've finally taken their target down for good. But check this out: when the smoke clears, the combat genius is just standing there, having caught all 3 arrows in one hand. While staring him down, they're paralyzed by pure shock and fear, wondering how he could react to a surprise attack like it was nothing. Louie casually shoves the arrows into the dirt. Cain checks on his partner, calling Sheath's friends scumbags for using such dirty tricks, but Louie just shrugs it off. Hearing this, the corrupt nobles get annoyed and aim their bows again, declaring that Cain is the next one to die. One of them triggers a dark magic attack called Double Arrow, firing an enchanted projectile at Cain alongside his partner's shots. Cain deflects the normal arrows with ease using his fencing skills, but that dark arrow keeps driving forward with relentless force. It looks like a dire situation. Blood splashes into the air the moment the arrow makes contact. Surprisingly, Cain missed a purple arrow hidden in the volley, but Louie caught it just in time, even though he cut his hand. Cain, whose life was just saved, sees the blood gushing and immediately tries to help his friend. However, the bleeding doesn't even faze Louie as he snaps the arrow, ready for whatever the enemy throws next. Meanwhile, a spectator calls out the principal for the malicious attack they just saw, suggesting the attackers be disqualified immediately. But the principal insists the event continues, because he's certain these so-called weaklings will lose in the end anyway. He postpones their punishment until after the exam, but orders healing potions to be made ready for the students right away. Back in the arena, Louie prepares to finish his enemies, winding up in a classic baseball pitcher's pose. Now watch this: with glowing eyes and massive power, he launches a slime like a literal cannonball, obliterating one of the nobles. The force of the impact sends the noble flying out of the arena, resulting in an instant disqualification. The remaining nobles witness the hit and start to panic. Louie has no intention of letting them off easy, leaping into the sky to hurl another slime at the terrified nobles. The slime smashes one noble right in the face, taking his teeth out, while the last one standing is too scared to see Louie behind him. Louie gives him a quick scare, causing the noble to stagger backwards in total terror. Taking advantage of his lost balance, Cain trips the fool right out of the arena, then thanks Louie for the earlier save. Thankfully, Louie is fine, and the 2 boys shake hands to solidify their brand new friendship. Louie teases Cain for being such a skilled noble, but Cain proudly brags about being a member of the legendary Oranka family. Apparently, the Oranka family is a prestigious bloodline known for producing the world's greatest grandmasters and sages. Their influence is so massive that they actually rival the power of the royal family and the Arcanist Association combined. Realizing Cain's family is the real deal, Louie takes back his comment as they both prepare to handle the rest of the slimes. However, seeing Louie rack up points continues to enrage the low-rank nobles, who decide to ignore the slimes and attack him instead. They rush toward him in a frenzy, even though they know Cain is standing right by his side. Their plan to kill 2 birds with 1 stone fails when high-rank nobles step in to protect Cain, sparking a massive free-for-all. Cain and Louie stand side by side, having each other's backs in the middle of the storm. Amidst the chaos stands a red-haired girl who clearly comes from a very reputable and powerful family. She tells her friend Miliana, a commoner, that it's finally time to make the people who look down on her suffer. The battle gets intense as Louie flips through the air, dodging slimes and incoming attacks from every possible direction. Miliana joins the action by tripping a noble, while the red-haired girl sends another one crashing into the arena walls. And just when we think we've seen it all, a new player enters the fray, a red-haired guy wielding a massive, soul-crushing hammer. Alright, you and I are about to see a commoner play God with a giant hammer, clearing every obstacle. To him, punching real people beats bullying slimes any day. He lets out a primal roar, blasting his rivals away effortlessly. But in the stands, the crowd is getting nervous and wants to shut these exams down. Now, check this, most of the losers here are actually high nobles. If any more blue bloods get kicked out, the academy is going to have a massive political nightmare. But the principal isn't flinching since he believes rules are rules. Suddenly, he streaks into the arena like a blinding flash of light to end this absolute chaos. He declares the second exam officially over, telling everyone their final scores will be posted in a bit. During the break, healers rush in with potions for the wounded, and all that earth magic damage is finally wiped away. Louie chugs a healing potion himself, and man, he is shocked at how fast it works. Sadly, this stuff is way too expensive for a regular commoner like him. Soon, the principal reveals the final rankings, and trust me, everyone is floored by the results. Louie's name is completely missing from the rankings. This news has the low-tier nobles celebrating. But wait, this list only shows people from 6th place and below. The principal explains that the top 5 actually shattered previous records, and he is ready to name names. 5th place goes to the talented commoner, Miliana Royce. Cain takes 4th, while the red-haired Fay secures 3rd. With Cain already called, Louie starts sweating. He is thinking, where the heck is my name? He starts panicking, wondering if he got disqualified for slapping around those noble kids earlier. Thankfully, that's not the case. He is actually ranked 2nd with 887 points. The whole room is buzzing because a regular commoner just outplayed every noble there. Cain, being a total bro, congratulates Louie on the win. Remember their deal? Now, Cain actually owes Louie a favor. Cain asks what Louie wants, but you and I know he's the type to save that favor. Then, the winner is revealed Neil Gunn, with a huge 888 points. Neil Gunn is that red-haired beast who just went on a rampage with the massive hammer. He is another commoner who just crushed the nobles, even beating Fay, who is clearly not taking this well. She is already swearing to hunt Neil down for a rematch later and test his strength once the announcements wrap up. Those low-ranked nobles get absolutely grilled by their seniors for losing to a bunch of commoners. Even the spectators are floored that the top 2 spots went to commoners. It is something that has never happened in Academy history, but the principal loves it, saying true power does not care about your family tree. That is exactly why the Arcanist Association runs most of the orphanages in the country. The principal then leads everyone to the next stage for their final test. On the way, Cain hypes Louie up for coming so close to the top spot and wonders which of them is actually stronger between him and Neil. They soon arrive at the final venue where the principal announces a massive survival test called the Emblem Battle Royale. For this round, every fighter gets an emblem before being warped into different parts of the woods. The goal is simple, grab as many emblems as you can using whatever ruthless method you choose. If you lose your emblem, you are out. Only the top 10 survivors with the most badges will actually get into the academy. Sadly, these rules mean Cain and Louie cannot team up. They trade good luck wishes before the match kicks off. Seconds later, the teleportation magic fires off, and Louie lands in his starting zone. He starts walking, knowing this 3rd exam is the only thing standing between him and his dreams. He is locked in and ready to win. But suddenly, a noble with a giant axe blocks his path. The guy is fuming, ready to pay Louie back for embarrassing the nobles. Right then, 2 spear users close in from behind. Louie also spots another one camping in the trees with a crossbow. Cornered, Louie realizes the senior who teleported him here must have leaked his secret location. The axe guy lunges with a massive swing, but Louie easily dances out of the way as the blade shatters a rock on the ground. The spear duo strikes next, but Louie evades them with a perfect backflip. While mid-air, a crossbow bolt streaks right toward his head, but he effortlessly bats it away with his sword. He lands clean, but these nobles are not ready to stop. They charge, but Louie shows skill isn't bought. Trust me, this is epic. Alright, you and I are jumping right into the heat of battle as Louie dodges these strikes and deflects an incoming arrow. He reacts just in time to avoid a follow-up spear thrust. His insane speed is really starting to get under those nobles' skin. On the other side of things, Louie is getting frustrated. He still hasn't figured out the flight path of those wind arrows. He forces himself to stay calm. It's time to bust out a legendary counterattack move known as the Sinosin. This technique is all about using his enemy's own power against them. When the nobles charge in, Louie spots his golden opportunity. His first victim is the guy with the axe, who's putting every bit of his strength into a single strike. Louie slides to the right, lets the axe miss, and wedges his sword underneath it to send the weapon flying into a nearby spearman. With 2 of them out of the way, the second spear wielder lunges at Louie with everything he's got. Simultaneously, The archer in the tree fires another wind arrow. Louie predicts the path perfectly and pulls the spearman right into the line of fire. The poor guy gets blasted away, losing his grip on his spear in the process. Louie catches the falling spear midair and launches it back at the tree archer, taking him out instantly. He carves through the rest easily and takes their emblems. Now pay attention, because Cain suddenly appears in a massive twist to stop their magic. The secret mastermind, the one who originally tried to trap Cain with a group of low-tier nobles, is absolutely floored to see him here. Cain mocks him for sending such weaklings from the Oranka family to stall him. Then, he shuts him up with a well-aimed crossbow bolt. Cain drops down and hands Louie an emblem, warning him that things are about to get messy if he doesn't take the help. But Louie isn't having it. He tells Cain he is perfectly capable of handling his own business. Suddenly, someone starts clapping loudly. A hidden figure praises Louie for his grit, calling him a rival she's been waiting for. The mysterious challenger finally steps into the light, revealing herself as the legendary Fay Durahan. She demands a duel. Louie asks Cain if he knows her, and Cain explains she's the daughter of a powerful grandmaster. Cain admits he lost to her once because he was careless, and he suggests Louie should just focus on collecting emblems instead. He warns Louie that Fay is no joke. She's already reached the level of an apprentice magic user. All this talking starts to annoy Fay. She snaps at them, accusing them of trying to run away from a real fight. Louie finally accepts the challenge. He's curious to see how a member of such a prestigious family actually fares in a battle. Fay is thrilled. She even promises to fight without using any magic to keep the duel fair. In a blur of motion, she lunges with her spear. But Louie catches the blade under his arm, leaving Fay genuinely impressed. She spins the weapon and swings it hard, but Louie sidesteps the blow just in time. Not slowing down, Fay leaps forward to unleash her sacred lance slam technique. He dodges, and the spear smashes into the earth, leaving a massive crater behind. The power of that move shocks the principal and the spectators watching. They can't believe Fay's strength, or the fact that Louie is still standing. Now, you and I have to wonder how long can he actually last against a top-tier family like hers. The principal weighs in, saying Louie can't win because this fight isn't just about skill, it's a total clash of wills. And from where he's sitting, he doesn't think Louie has the mental strength to match Fay's drive. That theory is put to the test immediately as Fay launches yet another devastating spear combo at Louie. But Louie dodges every strike effortlessly, almost like he's programmed to do it. He even finds an opening to strike back. Fay reacts quickly and counters, but he just flips over her attack and lands safely behind her. Fay is fuming. She hates that she can't land a hit, and even mocks Cain for not having this kind of quality. Louie just tells her it's all about observation. With enough practice, anyone can do it. Fay charges again, this time using a sacred lance move called the Crescent Fall. Once again, Louie maneuvers around the strikes without breaking a sweat. He starts analyzing the spear's mechanics, thrusts, sweeps, and defensive patterns. He knows spears are tough, but they have one major weakness: close-range combat. And that's exactly what he's targeting. Louie rushes in, trying to get inside her guard to set up his own counter. But Fay sees him coming and smacks his sword aside with her spear. She tells him her family's style has 0 weaknesses before spinning her weapon into a literal tornado. Stick with me to see what happens. Alright, you and I are about to see if a simple commoner can survive against a spear prodigy. Louie drops into a low stance, activating his blade technique to deflect Fay's relentless spear barrage. While parrying, he aims to exhaust her, knowing spear techniques drain a massive amount of stamina. He plays defense and waits for an opening, but he doesn't realize his own sword is already starting to fracture. Suddenly, Fay's energy dips, revealing her within the spear tornado. Louie sees the opening and strikes hard. Disaster strikes. His blade shatters inches from her, forcing him to leap back to avoid a counter. Fay is actually impressed, realizing that without some serious luck, she would have been completely wiped out. She senses something off, though, and calls him out for holding back during their intense duel. Louie makes excuses about observing his opponent, but he claims he is finally done with that. Now he is getting serious, even if Fay is worried about his broken weapon. He tells her not to worry. He is actually better off now since his fists are his true weapons. Taking a legendary martial arts stance, Louie prepares to face Fay's deadly weapon with just his bare hands. She charges forward like a spinning drill. Cain, watching from the sidelines, screams out a desperate warning. Now watch closely, because what Louie does next is going to leave everyone in the crowd speechless. He catches the spinning spear between his palms, freezing it in place while Fay and Cain look on in shock. The spectators are losing their minds, but the principal manages to keep a stoic, cool expression. He watches intently, trying to analyze Louie's move. Meanwhile, Fay refuses to quit and rips her spear back. She taps into her secret techniques, creating a blur of illusions that seem to attack Louie from every side. Instead of panicking, Louie takes a deep breath and settles back into his focused martial arts stance. With precision palm strikes, he parries every single phantom attack until the danger is completely diverted away. Neither the girl nor the principal have ever seen such mastery. Then, Louie lands a heavy blow, sending Fay flying across the arena. She barely recovers, slamming her spear into the dirt to kill the momentum before hitting the wall. Gasping for air, she asks what that move was. Louie calmly explains it is just a fundamental parry in martial arts. He lunges at her for the next round, and Fay instinctively swings her spear to keep him back. You see that? He is dodging everything with zero effort. It is like he is there and gone at the exact same time. Cain wonders if it is a literal illusion, while Fay grows frustrated, unable to land even one single hit. It turns out Louie is using the butterfly step, an elegant footwork style from a legendary boxer's past. It involves moving his feet back and forth with incredible speed. This creates a chaotic rhythm that perfectly counters Fay's spear. He traps her and delivers a punishing blow. The crowd and the principal are stunned, wondering if Louie is some kind of once-in-a-generation combat genius. Fay is on the ground, clutching her stomach in pain, but her warrior spirit refuses to break. She tosses her spear aside and lunges with her bare fists. Louie stays sharp, switching to a Wing Chun stance to meet her head-on. As Fay closes in with a powerful, crushing fist, he executes a flawless, tight block. The impact feels familiar, like a secret technique he knows. Louie smiles, actually respecting her stubborn grit. Fay is not interested in praise. She yells that her family isn't just about spears before attacking again. Louie braces himself, ready to meet her head-on. They trade blows like two martial arts masters. Strangely, Louie's excitement is boiling over. This is the fight he has always wanted. The intensity reaches a fever pitch. He demands more. His eyes turn a terrifying crimson as his killing intent begins to flood the entire arena. He lunges at Fay with a dark, suffocating aura. Fay looks up at the shadow he casts and is suddenly paralyzed by pure, primal terror. She sees a demonic entity with massive fangs ready to devour her. Her body literally stops responding to her, and she is unable to dodge his incoming strike. She barely manages to block his punch, but the force sends her crashing deep into a nearby tree. Even the principal is shaken, sensing the dark, overwhelming aura radiating from this mysterious commoner boy. The other nobles are furious. They can't accept that a nobody just humiliated a girl from a great family. They try to step in, but a wave of nausea hits them. One noble even starts puking from the pressure. You and I can see it. That demonic aura is no joke. This commoner is hiding something truly terrifying. Alright, stick with me, as we watch how a jealous noble like Sheath handles a commoner rising up. Sheath and Brian are forced to admit that Louie is way stronger than they ever expected. This realization fills Sheath with pure rage, since his plan to crush the commoner failed. Brian decides right then that Louie has to be removed from the board. He recalls an ancient legend, believing that letting a threat like Louie live will only cause chaos later. He wants to end the boy's life before he can become a real problem. Meanwhile, Louie is still in a frenzy, lunging straight at Fay with zero hesitation. Laughing like a total maniac, he pummels her relentlessly, sending her flying until she's coughing up blood. He flash steps right to her midair, slamming her into the dirt with a brutal barrage of heavy fist strikes. Fay barely manages to keep her guard up, tanking the non-stop assault, while wondering how Louis's strength exploded so fast. Feeling the massive gap between their power levels, she realizes she has zero chance of winning. Watch closely here. As Louis's terrifying fist aura closes in, her life flashes before her eyes, but she refuses to give up. Desperate to survive, Fay triggers her martial arcane technique, Blaze Fist, trying one last time to counter his strike. But Louis's power is just too much, blowing right through her and sending her crashing through the nearby trees. Suddenly, the fog clears. Louie snaps back to his senses and realizes he lost control again. He looks at his scorched hand, questioning the nature of his magic, while Cain rushes over to check on him. Out of nowhere, Sheath steps in, loudly declaring Louie disqualified because his emblem was destroyed during the chaotic brawl. He barks at Louie to get lost, but Cain steps up to argue, insisting the damage was clearly just an accident. Sheath claims the principal saw the whole thing and demands that Louie leave the exam grounds immediately. Before Louie can respond, Fay tells the noble scumbag to back off. Louie is shocked she's even still awake. Sheath accuses her of helping a commoner cheat, but Fay shuts him down without a second thought. She actually apologizes to Louie for using magic, which absolutely stuns Cain. He never thought she would actually apologize to anyone in her entire life. Louie offers his own apology for going berserk, but she just brushes it off like it was nothing. You and I both know she's proud, but Fay admits defeat and asks for a rematch once they're officially enrolled. Sheath just sneers at them, pointedly mentioning that Louie only managed to collect 4 emblems. Totally unfazed, Fay pulls out her own stash of emblems and hands them to Louie as his reward. This adds 10 more to his score, and Fay forces the record to be officially validated by the furious senior. She teams up with Cain to hunt down the weaklings, making sure nobody else has enough emblems to kick Louie out. Cain is totally on board with the plan, and the two of them head off to start their conquest. Cain teases her for finally using her head instead of just her fists, but she's already focused on the next target. A bit later, an examiner approaches Louie to tell him he's disqualified and begins escorting him out. Sheath hopes he's seen the last of him, but Brian knows Louie might still pass if Fay's plan works. Suddenly, a dark thought hits Sheath. It wouldn't be weird if an examinee died in an accident, right? Brian watches him plot this murder and wonders who Louie really is, especially after that unsettling feeling he got from the boy earlier. Louie turns in his emblems later that day, realizing that pure martial arts just can't keep up with magic yet. His goal now? Study at the academy and finally fuse magic with his martial arts style. That night, Louie wonders how he'll explain his shredded clothes to his mom, completely unaware he just walked past a shadow. An assassin lunges from the dark to take him out, but Louie reacts instantly. He lands a crushing backheel kick that sends the killer flying backward. The assassin can't believe he was spotted. Louie calmly tells him that the scent of blood is impossible to hide. Suddenly, more killers emerge. Their leader mocks Louie for being so relaxed while his life is literally on the line. As 3 assassins surround him, Louie decides to get serious. But then, he senses something even more dangerous in the bushes. Annoyed, the leader snaps at Louis for getting distracted and charges with a magic-coated dagger, shouting that the kid will be 6 feet under before he knows it. With the assassin leader coming at him full throttle, Louis skillfully dodges every rapid stab aimed at his vitals. He catches the man's arm and counters by slamming him face first into the hard ground. And trust me, you and I are going to want to see how this ambush ends. Alright, you and I are about to see if this kid can back up his reputation against some serious top-tier killers. After mocking Louie's hand-to-hand combat skills, the leader wonders how he will handle magic. Without waiting for an answer, he gives the signal for his group to start a full-blown mystic assault. Right on cue, 3 assassins fire lethal wind arrows from their crossbows at Louie. He reacts in a blur, dodging the projectiles before glancing at the shattered trees nearby. Looking at the impact, he realizes how much power those arrows pack. He has no choice but to push forward. Louie takes a sharp breath, activating a secret technique that surges chi through his body to boost his physical strength and grant him a sudden burst of explosive speed. He charges right in. Their leader laughs it off and orders another wave of wind arrows, but Louie expertly weaves through them until the assassins completely lose track of him. Out of nowhere, Louie drops from above with a heavy kick that sends the leader crashing into the dirt, then quickly retreats while dodging another barrage of projectiles. Furious, the leader screams for his men to stop Louie. Suddenly, another assassin appears behind the boy and launches a lightning-fast surprise chop kick. Louie barely senses the stealth attack and blocks it, but the force sends a painful jolt through his arms. He recovers instantly, glaring at this new enemy, a threat much more dangerous than the others. Before he can move, Louie realizes he is surrounded, struggling to evade wind arrows flying at him from every single direction. The relentless attacks are too much. Louie gets hit and blacks out. The assassins relax, thinking a commoner shouldn't have lasted that long anyway. But here is the part you and I need to watch. Louie suddenly jolts awake and takes him out. He grabs the fallen man's crossbow and starts firing wind arrows back at the remaining assassins. 2 go down, but the elite fighter effortlessly deflects the incoming shot. Realizing Louie was playing dead, he actually applauds the boy's clever feat. Louie asks why he doesn't care about his fallen men, but the shady warrior says he has no use for weaklings. Louie fires another round of arrows at him. The man's movement is on another level. He lunges forward, manifesting a massive magic hammer out of thin air. During the strike, he admits he wanted Louie as a disciple, but his employer wants the kid dead instead. Louie tries to tank the heavy blow, but it sends him flying across the battlefield. While he is still in the air, the opponent teleports to his side. He explains that while Louie might be better than an apprentice, he is no match for a high-ranked fighter. He summons the hammer again and slams the boy straight into the hard ground. Giving him no time to recover, the assassin continues his brutal assault with magic waves. Once the dust clears, the assassin is shocked to see that Louie is somehow alive. Broken and bleeding, the boy holds a defensive stance, declaring that he will not let it end here. But the assassin disagrees. He claims no one is coming to save the boy as he charges up another devastating magic hammer. Unable to move, Louie panics as the enemy prepares to send him to the afterlife. He unleashes his ultimate martial arcane skill, Celestial Hammer. In that final second, Louie's life flashes by. He remembers his promise to protect his family at the orphanage. Pay attention now, he pushes past his limits to change his fate, and his aura explodes. He counters with a mysterious power that actually stops the assassin's heavy attack. The collision of these two forces triggers a massive, earth-shaking explosion. Moments later, Louie is coughing on the ground. The assassin wonders why it feels like he is fighting an equal. Realizing why Louie is a target, he raises his hammer again, determined to kill what he now calls a monster. But suddenly, a powerful voice echoes through the air. A commanding shout orders him to stop. and a violent wind vortex erupts, stopping the assassin before he can finish the boy off. As he tries to flee, more wind traps him in place and crushes him with pressure. The assassin screams in pure agony as the magic restrains his broken body completely. Confused by the sudden shift, Louie wonders what is happening. Principal Aronian appears out of nowhere and praises him for keeping his dark power in check. He gives Louie a recovery potion before turning a cold stare toward the defeated assassin. He demands to know who sent the killer. The assassin realizes he is facing a grandmaster and warns that Louie is still doomed either way. "Trust me, you and I are just getting started." Then he suddenly blows himself up. "Alright, you and I are about to dive into a story where Aronian suspects the Assassin's Guild and hopes he's just overthinking things." Meanwhile, Louie is completely stunned as the potion knits his fractured bones back together with incredible healing power. He wonders aloud if it's just luck, asking the principal why he always seems to show up exactly when things get deadly. The principal keeps it brief, deciding they should save the heavy talk for when they get back home. That's when Louie starts to panic. It's late, and he knows his mother is going to be worried sick. He sprints off immediately, while Aronian summons a strange creature named Kylie to handle the messy task of cleaning up the scene. Somewhere else, in Mantia town, located in the north of the Candria Empire, two noblemen harass Liela, using a repaired millstone as a pathetic excuse for their behavior. Liela tries to stay calm, explaining she's just waiting for the kids. Now, pay attention here. The noblemen ignore her, moving in with bad intent until Louie arrives just in time to stop them. Liela is relieved he's back, but her heart sinks when she sees how badly he's been roughed up. Louie checks if she's okay, but she's fixated on his torn clothes and the blood staining them. As he scrambles for a believable excuse, the noblemen start throwing around threats about their lord and a fighter named George. To their shock, Principal Aronian descends from the sky, stepping right into the middle of the heated confrontation. He introduces himself and pressures the scumbags to leave. Seeing he's a true grandmaster, the noblemen bow down and get the hell out. Aronian then turns to Liela, telling her they have some serious things to discuss. Liela leads them inside, but Aronian can't help noticing that same millstone the noblemen were complaining about earlier. He's baffled by how it runs automatically without any magic, soon realizing that these strange inventions are all over the house. Liela offers him some fruit, giving all the credit to Louie for making their lives so much easier with his gadgets. She then asks nervously if her boy committed some crime to bring the principal to their door. But the principal reveals it's the other way around, praising Louie's insane talent as something only ever seen in the legendary Gaia scriptures. He tells a story of the past, when a goddess-guided genius rose up during the dark age of monster rule. He created martial arcane after mastering the elements. Within 5 years, he and his team crushed the monsters and saved all of humanity from total extinction. That victory became known as Liberation Day, and the man was hailed as the first hero in the holy Gaia scriptures. Liela praises the savior. Louie says legends don't mention him, but the principal insists they do. Now watch, he reveals the hero had black hair, an insane secret hidden from the public. Apparently, a deep madness consumed him, leading to a sin so terrible that his entire existence was scrubbed from the history books. This shocks Louie, who fears his own inner darkness, especially since Aronian explains why every country hunts down people with black hair. He then calls Louie out, asking why he's been dyeing his hair all this time. Liela jumps in to take the blame, explaining her innocent and protective reasons for the disguise. She starts listing Louie's best qualities, but he stops her, knowing a grandmaster like Aronian could have killed him already if he wanted. Impressed by such sharp foresight in a young kid, the principal realizes Louie has already tamed the madness within his soul. To everyone's surprise, the principal declares that even in this era of peace, Louie is the world's new hero. He telekinetically grabs a fruit, talking about the lurking darkness before offering to guide Louie on the right path after seeing his potential. He suddenly hurls the fruit at Louie, but the kid doesn't even flinch, catching it with total ease. Aronian tells him he passed the test, even though Fay and Cain went out of their way to fail everyone else. He asks Louie to be his disciple at the academy. Louie excitedly asks what happens if he goes berserk, only for the fruit in his hand to be sliced into pieces. Aronian's voice turns cold as ice, replying that if that happens, he'll personally send the boy to meet his maker. The following morning, his foster sibling praises the invitation, but Louie can't help but see the principal's offer as a dangerous warning instead. While the sibling blabbers about tuition fees, Louie thinks about his connection to that legendary hero. You and I have to wonder if he can really trust a man with that much power. Just before the principal left that night, our main character, Louie, pulls him aside, wondering why he would stress Laciella out with the truth. He claims ignorance makes her a burden, but Louie isn't buying it. Principal Aronian explains she has to know if his real identity ever leaks, his entire family is in grave danger. Before taking off, he gives Louie a final warning to get stronger, because this is just the start of his trials. All right, stick with me. Louie realizes Aronian is right, and vows to reach a new level at the academy. Moments later, his little siblings run up to say their final goodbyes. His sister Lana leaps into his arms with teary eyes. She makes him pinky promise to visit every single time he gets a long break from school. Soon after, his older brother mentions that a noble's butler is outside looking for him. Louie heads out to meet the mysterious man. The man confirms who he is and hands over an official invitation from the prestigious Oranka family. Seeing Cain's invite, Louie figures he just wants to bond and decides to play along. He hops into the carriage, and the journey begins. Later that day, they finally pull into the town of Harzan. As Louie steps out, the butler gives him the rundown on the Orankas. His jaw drops at the massive mansion, but Cain is already rushing out to greet him. Cain reminds him they are officially classmates now, though Louie credits his own hard work on the final exam. He even acknowledges Fay's assistance and decides to let their previous bet slide for now. Cain shrugs it off, saying he would have passed anyway with Fay's seal of approval. He then offers to be sparring partners, promising to share info about the academy and magic before they start. Now pay attention, because here's the part where Cain's mother arrives and trashes Louie for being a filthy commoner. Cain insists they are friends, but she ignores him, demanding to know why a commoner is sniffing around her son. Disgusted just by breathing the same air, she pulls out a gold ring worth a fortune and tosses it at him. She tells him to get lost, but as Cain moves to apologize, he catches Louie actually picking up the ring. Louie calmly explains that he recognized Cain's talent, and that is how they became friends. He asks if she thinks her own son's words are worth as little as that ring. Man, she is furious. Glaring daggers, she orders her staff to toss him out, and the butlers immediately swarm our main character. Cain tries to tell her that Louie actually defeated Fay, but she thinks the idea is completely ridiculous. Louie backs it up, declaring he is the key to making Cain even stronger. His arrogance sends her over the edge, but suddenly the doors fly open and a massive gust of wind blasts the butlers back. Cain's father, William, steps inside, repeating Louie's bold claim word for word. The mother flinches and tries to talk to him, but he just walks right past her. Cain bows as Louie introduces himself, but his mind is racing as he senses an aura from the father on par with Principal Aronian. William asks if the rumors are true, and Cain admits that Louie is indeed stronger than him. You and I are about to see William test him, as he immediately releases a killing intent that looks like a ferocious tiger. Before Louie can even move, that aura fangs right into his chest, and he suddenly realizes he can't breathe. Panic sets in as Louie realizes that William isn't playing around, he seriously intends to kill him. William's gaze is like literal daggers, and his overwhelming willpower starts tearing a hole right through Louie's soul. Trying to stay focused, Louie realizes just how insane the willpower of a true Grandmaster actually is. But thanks to years of non-stop monster hunting, he's built up a massive resistance to killing intent. His resolve ignites, and the hole in his soul begins to heal. Suddenly, his own spirit erupts into the shape of a massive dragon. This becomes a legendary clash of wills as the two spirits lock horns in a brutal standoff. Once the dust settles, Cain rushes over to help Louie up after he narrowly loses that battle of wills. William asks why he wants strength, and Louie tells him straight it is to protect his family. William turns to go, scolding Cain for his weak will while telling him to learn a thing or two from Louie. Furious, the mother tries to protest, but William coldly shuts her down without a second thought. Feeling relieved, Cain decides to take Louie straight to the training grounds to get to work. Once they reach the training area, Cain apologizes for his parents' behavior, but Louie just brushes it off. Trust me, you and I can see Louie's growth is just starting, but for now, he just laughs off William's intensity. All right, stick with me. You and I are about to see if Louis survives a twisted test meant to prove he is the true Oranka heir. He asks if this is William's messed up version of love, which sends Cain spiraling back into his own memories. Thinking back, Cain was basically a prisoner in his own mansion, with his entire childhood consumed by eating, sleeping, and training. Apparently, William is obsessed with turning his son into a legendary sage, just like his grandfather before him. Cain realized all he ever wanted was his father's approval, but his elite status and natural talent only turned the mansion into a prison. He spent every day staring at the birds outside, desperately wishing he could fly away and finally be free. But in a world where might makes right, he was simply too weak to survive on his own. Grabbing a rapier from his inventory, he realizes that swinging his blade is the only way to shatter those heavy chains. Cain reveals his father is an academy graduate and vows to grow strong enough to finally earn the right to live freely. Cain turns to Louis, trusting his friend to make him stronger, and the two immediately jump into a serious sparring match. Meanwhile, William watches them from the shadows, asking his butler for the latest report on their mysterious guest, Louis. The butler explains that Louis is anything but ordinary, detailing his insane performance during the exams. After hearing how Louis crushed Fay and gained the principal's favor, William realizes the kid is nothing but a huge troublemaker. The butler is confused why let a loose cannon like Louis stay. Now pay attention, because William's answer tells us everything he believes warriors only grow through conflict, and his intuition says Louie is the key to Cain's evolution. Back at the fight, an unarmed Louie sends Cain flying backward with a perfectly timed kick. Cain recovers and triggers a wind lunge, charging forward with a magical stab attack that is supposed to be lightning fast. But he charges straight into the fist of Louie, nearly ruining his handsome face and losing the match instantly. Afterward, Louie praises the skill but points out its massive flaws. Cain finally sees why Fay lost, but he gets awkward when he notices Louie is staring intensely at his face. Louie takes the sword and asks if Cain feels the weird disconnect in his style, but Cain is completely lost. Cain explains he's using the secret Oranka family techniques that made his father and grandfather the legends they are today. Louie mentions there are other ways to fight, making Cain wonder if his destiny is different from his ancestors. Louie puts the sword away, pulls out a dagger, and calls Cain over to discuss a wild plan. He wants to catch Cain's father off guard, and suddenly, the duo is lunging at William with daggers drawn, ready for an ambush. But right before the strike, Louie gives Cain a quick lesson on why speed is everything in martial arts. He reminds him of that slime test back at the academy. True speed isn't just about moving fast, it's about reaction time and making split-second decisions under extreme pressure. Cain's natural agility and wind magic are perfect for this, but mastering thrusting weapons is actually incredibly difficult. Louie hands him 2 daggers, telling him that his family's path might not be the right fit for his unique talents. He guesses that's exactly why William stopped growing at the Grandmaster level and tells Cain he needs a specialized style to truly unlock his power. Let's see if he's actually brave enough to do it, and yeah, Cain is ready for anything to be free. Louie respects the hustle and quickly breaks down how this new combat style is going to work. They decide to ambush William to showcase Cain's new skills and burning determination, with Cain immediately triggering his wind support spell, Accelerate. The spell supercharges their speed. They close the gap in a flash, worrying the butler, but William calmly dodges Cain's initial strike without breaking a sweat. Suddenly, Louie blurs to his side, unleashing a terrifying storm of slashes that would gut any normal man. William dodges effortlessly while Louie realizes that daggers are the ultimate speed weapons when combined with high-level martial arts. Louie then activates his butterfly step, hoping his explosive new speed will be enough to catch the old man off guard. William is actually impressed for a second, but he still manages to dance around the relentless wave of attacks. Cain jumps back in, using his aerial skills to launch himself forward. In the middle of the chaos, Cain realizes his body feels lighter than air, giving him a taste of true freedom. Seeing how well the daggers fit him, he decides to fuse his martial techniques with his wind magic. The moment Cain merges his powers, it catches William by surprise. Cain embraces this new path and swings for a direct hit. Trust me, you and I are about to see William push back with an absolute explosion of power. William demands to know if Cain is ditching the family style just to prove a point. The boys regroup, and Louie yells for Cain to trigger, accelerate again. No hesitation. Cain grabs Louie and guns it, pushing their assault into overdrive. Let's see if they can even touch William, whose dodging is on a whole different level. Seconds later, William catches Cain's blade in a grip of pure aura. Cain rips his sword free and backs off. William calls him a coward, but Cain is just remembering Louie's lesson sometimes. Retreating is the smartest move. He finds his footing and dives right back into the fray. But wait, Cain uses a tornado spell to slip away and regroup with Louie once more. They scream as they charge William's back, putting everything they have into one final, desperate strike. See, Louie previously taught Cain a baseball trick called a change-up. He showed him how messing with speed can bait an opponent into a fatal mistake. The goal was simple: wreck the enemy's timing and force a delayed reaction. Because if a master hesitates for even a split second, that's an opening. Now pay attention, the duo is actually putting that theory to the test with these insane speed variations. William brushes off their slow swings like they're nothing. But then, Cain's delayed strike catches him completely off guard. The blade actually grazes William's shoulder, slicing right through his fur. The boys are hyped and ready to keep going, but to their shock, William declares that's enough. He warns Cain not to tarnish the family name before walking off the training grounds. Cain is beaming, thinking he finally won his father's respect, and celebrates with Louie as the Duke heads out. Walking away, William can't stop thinking about that hit-and-run tactic. The idea of a strategic retreat is actually starting to interest him quite a bit. He summons a dagger, realizing he just learned a valuable lesson from a couple of kids. Meanwhile, Louie is low-key salty. He missed his chance to fight a real grandmaster. But Cain is on top of the world because his dad finally acknowledged him, so he decides to reward Louie with a massive gift for making it happen. Later, they head to the Oranka family's private library. The sheer scale of the place blows Louie away, but Cain just hands him a reward box for helping him find his path. Once Louie peeks inside, his jaw drops. This stuff is worth a fortune. We're talking high-level academy references and rare magic texts that commoners never even lay eyes on. Cain hands over books on mana theory and attributes to help him out, then sticks around to give him some expert tips about magic and martial arts. But he's not done. Cain starts explaining the magic awakening ritual that every single new student has to survive. Usually, you have to pay 10 gold coins at a temple to sense the elements through the Gaia statue, which is a total ripoff. Luckily, the academy does it for free. Cain goes over all the future fees and tells Louis to just rely on him whenever he needs a hand. Louis takes the gifts, and they agree that their little bet is officially settled. But Louis knows he needs real cash fast, and he remembers Julian talking about the magic pharmacy business. I know what you're thinking, and yeah, he's planning to use knowledge from his past life to invent things and get rich quick. With a plan forming, Louis asks Cain about his family's ties to the Merchant Guild, but he keeps his big business ideas a total secret for now. 1 week later, the new freshmen finally arrive at the Condre Arcanist Academy. As Louis walks in, a sophomore named Rose catches a whiff of his scent and immediately assumes he's a high-ranking noble. I mean, that expensive cologne is a dead giveaway, so she instantly latches onto him for a private tour. As they walk, Rose mentions that since the Emperor is getting up there in age, things are getting messy. The imperial heirs are constantly clashing with the great noble families right here at the school. It looks calm, but behind the scenes, there's a brutal war going on for control over educational resources. One wrong move means getting targeted and expelled, so Rose gets close and asks which side his family is on. That's when a guy named Brian shows up and calls Louis a commoner who shattered the exam records. Rose is stunned since that cologne isn't for peasants, so she storms off in a total huff. You and I can see where this is going. Brian tells him the academy is just a small empire, and Rose is only the beginning. Alright, stick with me because Louis is about to get caught in some serious academy drama. Cain asks what Brian wanted, but Louis just shrugs it off as a simple greeting between them. That is when he learns Brian is actually the Chancellor's son. Right then, 2 familiar faces arrive, and Fay immediately starts trash-talking Brian, calling him totally weak-willed and pathetic. Cain takes it personally and starts yelling at her for the indirect insult to his character. She tells Cain she will only respect him if he becomes as strong as Louis is. Louis tries to thank her for the exam help, but she just brushes him off, saying he passed on his own. She raises a fist, swearing to win their next battle. This drives Cain crazy, and he starts shouting because she is completely ignoring him just to talk to Louis. After some arguing, Miliana finally drags Fay away to get their paperwork done. They have to finish registering, and once they are alone, Cain hands Louis a massive bag of gold coins as his fair share. Louis can't believe they made this much money just from the instructions he gave to Cain earlier. See, Cain had visited Louis earlier to pick up perfume samples he crafted for the village trading company. Back then, Cain wasn't even sure if a fragrance like this would actually sell well at all. But now, seeing the success of this cologne, he's wondering if his own mom should try it. They agree to keep their business a secret and head to the student reception desk to finalize their enrollment. Louis gets his student card quickly, which really ticks off the nearby nobles who hate having him as a classmate. They whisper that he must have cheated his way in. That is when Louis hears that Sheath has been expelled. Now, pay attention here, because Cain reveals that Sheath was actually the mastermind behind the assassins the other day. The principal kicked him out immediately. Hearing that Sheath nearly had him killed makes Louise's blood boil. It gets worse though, because Cain points out Sheath's older brother, a guy named Jess. Since they don't know what Jess might do, Cain tells Louis to stay close to him for safety. Jess and his goons spot them, and Jess just smiles, whispering that this is only the beginning of Louis's slow descent into despair. Later at the Grand Hall, the principal stands before the freshmen to give his official opening address. After a quick speech, he invites Neil to the stage as the representative to say a few words. Suddenly, the brute walks up half-naked with a giant axe, radiating enough killing intent to freeze the entire room. The teachers try to attack, but Aronian holds them back for now. Neil screams at the students, calling them all idiots and declaring his goal is to beat every single one of them. The crowd explodes in anger, but Neil just leans into the insults, looking completely unfazed by their shouting. His new teacher is already dreading the chaos, but Aronian just tells him to stay calm for the moment. Without warning, Neil hurls his axe into the crowd, shouting that he has already found his main target. You and I saw that coming, right? The axe slams down right in front of Louie, and Neil instantly leaps onto the handle, staring him down. Then he loudly declares that they are going to fight. Cain jumps in, reminding Neil that the ceremony is still happening. He tries to shield Louis, screaming at the brute to back off right now. Neil ignores him and asks Louis if he's actually like this loudmouth friend who is all bark and no bite. Fuming, Cain tries to throw a punch, but Louis grabs him and tells him to cool it. Neil just gets more excited, telling them both that he is happy to take them on at once. Brian steps in to de-escalate, advising Neil to play nice since they are both commoners. He warns that Neil won't last long if he keeps acting like a thug. Neil tells Brian to beat it, calling him a pathetic small fry that isn't even worth his time. Brian is humiliated, and the nobles start complaining that commoners have no place in a school for the elite. Cain just snickers at Brian for making such a fool of himself. He cracks his knuckles, ready to scrap with Neil, who looks more than ready for a battle. Suddenly, a teacher intervenes. He warns them that fighting is strictly forbidden except during official tests or tournaments, and only when a supervisor is present. Anyone caught breaking these rules will face immediate expulsion from the academy. Realizing he might actually get kicked out, Neil laughs and admits that would be a total pain. He grabs his axe and puts the fight on hold, telling Louie to be ready for him. "Trust me, you and I won't want to miss what happens when classes finally start tomorrow." "Alright, you and I are about to see why picking a fight with Louis is a massive mistake." Fay snaps, teaching Cain a lesson for almost getting them all expelled. She says sorry to Louie, explaining that her rivalry with Neil is the real problem here. Since they tied in the exams, Neil is desperate to prove himself by crushing the guy who actually beat Fay. Louis kept his cool during the taunts, which is a relief, because Fay would have felt terrible if he got kicked out. Cain drags Louis away, pointing out that the rest of the students absolutely despise them right now. Later, at the academy shop, Louis loses it when he sees the insane price tags on everything. The clerk tries to hawk pillows for gold coins, leaving our poor hero struggling to calculate how he'll survive on his tiny budget. To his shock, Cain claims these prices are actually pretty normal. Louis realizes this shop is his only option, making him finally understand just how vital every single coin really is. The cheapskate grabs the basic starter kit, thanking his lucky stars for the money he made selling that cologne. He still plans to send whatever is left back to the orphanage. Looking at all the high-end gear, Louis realizes he needs a better way to stack some serious cash. Fay heads to the girls' dorm, promising she'll be there to watch Louis during his big magic awakening ritual tomorrow. Seeing the fancy magic coolers they're carrying, he vows to work 10 times harder just so he can afford one. Back at the dorms, Louis heads to his room, praying his new roommate isn't some kind of total nightmare. Now pay attention, because Louis is about to find out that bullying is a major problem even in this prestigious academy. The nobles scream at a quiet student, but the kid doesn't say a single word. One bully grabs him, but Louis instantly strikes a secret vital point on the guy's hand. The bully recoils in shock as Louis reminds them that fighting is banned, but the noble tries to act like they're totally innocent victims. He lunges at Louis, but Louis hits a nerve cluster that forces the bully's hand to slap his own friend right across the face. "You saw that too, right?" Louis is just playing completely innocent now. He taps another pressure point on the guy's foot, making him deliver a sharp kick to his other henchman. While the bully is still confused, Louis lands one final hit, sending the jerk crashing into his buddies. The brat finally realizes Louis is behind this weirdness, but our hero just plays it cool and denies everything. He screams that Louis is a body-controlling monster, but one cold glare from our guy sends shivers straight down his spine. Fortunately, the quiet student steps in and stops Louis from taking things any further. Louis offers to report this to the principal, causing the bullies to scramble away while screaming empty threats of revenge. Once they're gone, Louis tries to introduce himself to Kara, whose name he spotted on the discarded bedding. Louis tries to be friendly, but Kara just ignores him and heads inside. Louis doesn't take it personally since Kara is clearly just super shy, so he unpacks and hopes tomorrow's awakening ritual goes smoothly. Meanwhile, near the goddess statue, a mysterious group is busy setting up a deadly trap. Next day at the temple, the freshmen stand in awe before the massive statue of Gaia, the goddess of their world. The instructor begins the tale of how Gaia created this world for both humans and monsters. They were meant to coexist, but the monsters' terrifying power allowed them to conquer the sky, land, and the sea. This led to a brutal war that soaked the world in blood, leaving humanity trapped in the middle of the chaos. Gaia was furious, so she granted her divine blessings to the humans who were born without magic. With that power, they finally mastered the 4 ancient elements. They created the martial arcane and fought until they finally reclaimed the world, becoming its new and rightful rulers. The instructor tells the class that they're about to receive that same blessing and awaken their own magic. Louie looks serious, noticing that the instructor completely skipped over any mention of the legendary first hero. Kara watches him closely, but the instructor suddenly orders everyone to follow him inside. He leads them to specific tiles, warning that those with talent will sense the elements, while those who fail are useless to the academy and will be expelled. He delivers the warning while glaring directly at Louie, before telling the rest of the group to take their seats. "You and I just saw that glare. Why does this teacher already hate Louie?" "Alright, you and I are about to witness the moment these students face the foundation of their entire world." The instructor begins the chant, and suddenly, elemental symbols ignite the statue, bringing the ritual to life. Students are stunned as a massive goddess avatar appears in space, surrounded by swirling elemental bubbles that look absolutely unreal. As they focus, many students are finally granted the power of one of the 4 elements. Some cheer with joy, while others complain that their assigned element doesn't fit their future career goals. Suddenly, Neil is engulfed in a massive vortex, shocking everyone by awakening both the earth and fire attributes. The crowd wonders if Neil is a true genius for mastering 2 elements at once. Fired up, the musclehead ignites his flames and demands the elements obey his every command. He mocks Louis, declaring that if he can't awaken, he's not a worthy rival. Louis better not fail him now. Now, pay attention here. While everyone expects a miracle, you and I can see that there are absolutely no elements appearing around Louis. The poor guy is concentrating as hard as possible, wondering why he can't sense a single thing. He wonders if it's because he's an outsider, then remembers a strange power from his spar with Cain. Louis feels his mind being attacked, but he refuses to let his iron will break that easily. With a primal scream, the boy shatters the mental cage, holding his thoughts back. Suddenly, 4 colors of light swarm him, stunning the instructor who had hidden a magic circle beneath Louis to block the boy's mind from the outside world. Louis reaches out to touch the floating lights, but they dart away from him like frightened spirits. He tries again and again to grab them, but he keeps failing miserably. Confused, he wonders why he can feel the elements but just cannot touch them. The instructor smirks, thinking Louis is dead wrong if he thinks breaking the barrier is enough to finally awaken. This shady guy used a confinement circle and a magic orb because powerful people wanted Louis crushed for good. Since he already took their money, the instructor isn't about to back down now. Trust me, you and I need to see what happens next as the hours pass and Louis is left in despair while the other students leave. Nobles start mocking Louis, calling him a total letdown, but Kara senses something is seriously wrong here. He warns Louis that there is a hidden trap right beneath his floor tiles. Louis smashes the tile, revealing a magic forbidden orb underneath. He stares at it, completely confused by its presence. Kara tells him to hurry up. Despite his curiosity, Louis steps away from the broken floor and refocuses his mind. Suddenly, the remaining students gasp as 4 colors of light form a massive vortex around Louis. Incredible. The instructor is baffled. How did Louis awaken? Even a master shouldn't break through a confinement circle and that magic orb. He tries to interfere, but Principal Aronian suddenly appears and tells the man to stand down immediately. The students are shocked to see the principal, assuming he is only there to check on Louis' struggling awakening. They wonder if there's a secret connection between them. As Aronian leaves, the instructor watches with pure hatred. He curses under his breath. Their plan was foiled and almost exposed because the principal showed up out of nowhere. Later that night, he meets Jess and breaks the news that their entire scheme has failed. He warns Jess to stay away for now. All Jess can do is curse Louis for slipping through their fingers. Back at the temple, Aronian tells Kylie to track Sid's movements. He won't allow outsiders to mess with his academy. With the obstacles cleared for now, Aronian watches Louis, leaving the boy to figure out how to control these elements on his own. Louis observes the light orbs, realizing they match Cain's description. He remembers Cain's lessons on how elements actually work. Back then, Louis learned that monsters are born with elemental powers, unlike humans who must awaken. Monsters have magic crystals inside them, each holding a different elemental force. This is exactly why these beasts can control multiple elements. Humans, however, only awaken when an element chooses them. They can't use magic without manipulating the world around them. Cain had tossed him a magic crystal, explaining that one must train both mind and body once the elements recognize you. So what do you and I take from this? Knowledge is power, and everything in this world is crafted from elements. Alright, let's dive into the moment. Louis opens his eyes and sees the water element drifting toward him. This time, the particles don't run away. When Louis finally makes contact, he feels the immense, crushing power of ancient sea beasts, learning that the very essence of the world manifests through Gaia's will. The vortex around him spirals out of control, forcing Aronian to immediately activate the goddess barrier seal to contain the chaos. This move traps Louis inside a heavy barrier constructed from all 4 of the natural elements. Suddenly, Louis's hair dye fades away, leaving his true black hair completely exposed. Luckily, the barrier emits a blinding light, stopping the stunned students from catching a glimpse of Louis. All they care about is why he's producing such massive magical waves and why the principal is sealing him. While maintaining the seal, Aronian yells for Louis to stay calm and ignore the chaos until he finally finds his peace. Now, he observes the elements closely and realizes they're shockingly similar to elementary particles found in science. He tests his theory by shifting their frequency, causing the ball of light to erupt as the elements reveal their symbols. Suddenly, the magical vortex spirals with massive force. Aronian and the nearby students are terrified, admitting that Louis's aura feels way more dangerous than Neil's ever did. Seeing that Louis is staying in control, Aronian praises him for completely exceeding his wildest expectations. Now, pay attention here, because Louis realizes that magical essence and scientific elementary particles are actually the same thing. This means humans might actually be able to use magic just as easily as the monsters do. He absorbs the elements, noting that, just like particles, they are in a state of constant motion. By syncing their movement with his breathing and chi flow, the circulation of these elements becomes perfectly smooth. If that works, Louis might create a magic crystal inside his body to cast spells like the Qiang techniques. Louis concentrates until a crystal forms in his eye, causing ice to erupt and shatter the barrier into a million pieces. Aronian is stunned by this raw ability, smiling as he watches Louie fly into the air using wind magic. The other students scream and run for their lives as massive ice crystals erupt behind them, freezing everything to the bone. Seeing how dangerous things are getting, Aronian knows he must act. Aronian moves to suppress the power, calling out to the goddess and chanting a prayer while gripping his emblem tight. Instantly, he summons a massive barrier of flames that completely cancels out Louie's deadly icicles. The massive impact of the collision alerts everyone in the library, outside the temple, and even the training room. Right after, Aronian wonders what kind of strange element Louie was actually using just now. While Louie checks his body and realizes he has successfully combined two elements into one, he spots Aronian staring at him with a dead serious look. Louie is confused by the flame wall, but Aronian snaps his fingers and the entire barrier vanishes back into his badge. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Louie definitely overdid it, especially once he sees all those students passed out. Aronian speaks to Kalk calmly, saying he is going back to his office and leaving the cleanup to him, then telling Louie to follow because he has questions. Once in the office, Aronian congratulates Louie on awakening not just one, but all 4 elemental attributes. Louie shows him their core, and Aronian is genuinely impressed by how smoothly he can handle such volatile elements. He hands Louie an old book he used to study magic back in the day. However, he warns that the book only covers wind and earth, since those are the only elements he can use. For fire and water, he suggests Louie ask Fay and Miliana, since they come from great families and already know him. With that settled, Aronian calls for Kylie, and she instantly spawns right into the room. He introduces her as his most trusted aide, informing Louie that she will be his protector from now on. Kylie asks them to move to a different location, leading them to a private training ground reinforced with heavy earth magic. For starters, Kylie asks Louie to show her his specific element. Louie demonstrates, explaining that by speeding up and blending 2 different elements together, he created a new power called ice, leaving Aronian shocked since he has never even heard of elemental combinations. And trust me, you're going to want to see this. Kylie smiles like a maniac, wanting to confirm that power up close. In a split second, alright, stick with me, Kylie lunges at Louis, only for him to block every single strike with his pure ice magic. Kylie is struggling to keep up with his speed. She barely dodges a heavy blow, backing off to wonder if he has actually gotten faster. Then it hits her. She isn't just slow, it is the freezing effect of that ice element weighing her down. Melting the frost with her flames, she asks Aronian if anyone has ever actually fused elements like this before. He shuts that idea down fast. Since the dawn of magic, countless geniuses have tried to fuse different attributes, but not a single one of them ever succeeded. In this world, most people are stuck with one attribute. Only a lucky few ever awaken to more than one. Even Miran, the Empire's strongest saint, known as the greatest genius of the Eastern region, even he could not merge 2 attributes together without failing miserably. Aronian explains that his mind and body just could not take the strain. It is simply too much for any normal human to handle. Now pay attention. Aronian notes that controlling elements requires insane mental and physical strength, especially the raw willpower Louie used to guide and project them outside his body. Trying to do this with multiple elements, they will collide and kill the wielder instantly. Staring at Louie, Kylie suspects his potential might actually rival a saint's. She cranks up her fire magic to heat her body and demands that Louie fight her one more time. As she charges in and they clash, Aronian mentions that Miran actually had 2 theories on how to handle multiple attributes at once. The first was simple: get a dragon's body that can survive the elements crashing into each other. The second option was using magic crystals for power, just like the monsters do. When Louie asks how those theories went, Aronian reveals the results were a total disaster. Every single experiment failed until the entire concept was eventually banned. That is exactly why he is so shocked to see someone finally breaking the taboo right now. Louie suddenly realizes he is succeeding where everyone else failed, because he is circulating his different elements through entirely separate internal pathways. That is the only thing stopping them from colliding. Kylie cuts his thoughts off with a kick, telling him not to get cocky, even as she realizes the truth. Louie parries the strike, admitting that his unique situation is probably going to cause a lot of trouble. She agrees. If word of his insane abilities ever gets out to the public, there is no telling what might happen to him. He needs to stop doing anything that draws unnecessary attention. He agrees, deciding to tell people he just has a water attribute and ice is just an advanced application. Aronian watches closely as Louie invites Kylie to attack again. She lunges with a flaming fist, but he creates a ball of water, crushing it with enough pressure to douse her fire on impact. See that? Kylie and Aronian are totally stunned. Louie just turned water into solid ice. Aronian knows this isn't magic. But Kylie is totally confused. Her flames cannot melt the ice, and the frozen ball is actually radiating heat. He explains that liquids change form under extreme pressure, and he pulled it off by applying his past knowledge. Aronian promises to teach Louie how to master his power properly. even offering him credit for any new discoveries made. After seeing that power, Kylie wonders why Aronian is still protecting him. She is convinced the whole thing was just a fluke. But Aronian mentions that history is full of powerful coincidences, and he isn't about to ignore the possibilities right in front of him. Left with no choice, Kylie accepts the job of guarding Louis, even if he feels like a high-maintenance student. She walks away and teleports using her flames. Once she is gone, Aronian tells Louie that classes start tomorrow and orders him to head back to the dorms. Before he leaves, Aronian hands him a special potion to help with mental recovery. Louie drinks it and realizes he isn't tired at all on the walk back. He even thinks about meditating until dawn. He steps into his room and is surprised to find Kara still awake and waiting. He thanks Kara for saving him earlier that day, wondering how he knew where to find him. So Kara hands him a special trading company card. Looking at the card, Louie finally realizes where Kara gets all his info. As Kara heads to bed, Louie asks if helping a commoner like him will get him targeted. Kara just thanks him for the concern and shuts the door. Louie does not need that business card right now, but he knows he might need Kara's help somewhere down the road. The next day at the Academy training hall, a total weirdo starts flexing while introducing himself as Derek. Trust me, you and I are about to see him turn these students into absolute beasts. Alright, you and I are about to watch one student turn this whole academy upside down. While everyone else is weirded out by him, Louie is busy admiring his insane physique. Derek spots Louie and uses a flash step to get right behind him, sizing up the kid's impressive frame with interest. He glares at Cain with pure disdain, claiming the quality of noble heirs has hit rock bottom before announcing it is time for the seniors to show these rookies how to actually use the equipment. Right then, the upperclassmen swagger in, trashing the freshmen for being weaklings who lose to commoners. They are determined to prove the massive power gap between an apprentice and a real fighter. Derek tells them to bring it. One senior explains that this training gear is reinforced with heavy earth magic. He sits down and effortlessly lifts a literal ton of weight. The freshmen are stunned watching the seniors defy gravity with ease. But when Derek tells the rookies to start, they nearly lose their souls trying to move the gear. The seniors just laugh at them. Now pay attention to this, because what Louie does next is absolutely legendary. He lifts 10 tons and smokes the treadmill while weighed down. Spinning so fast he creates a massive tornado. Everyone is losing their minds, wondering if Louie is doping, but there is no trace of any magic potions in his system. Out of nowhere, they notice Neil stepping up to give it a shot too. Neil casually lifts 15 tons and sprints with 20 on his back. After proving his point, he challenges Louie to a duel to settle who is actually the top dog. Louie just shuts him down, saying training is about building yourself up, not showing off like a total clown. That senior who worked his tail off to impress everyone is fuming now. Feeling disrespected, he snaps and lunges at Louie, screaming at the top of his lungs. He tells Louie not to get cocky just because he is a bit strong. When he asks about their attributes and Neil reveals his dual powers, the guy completely loses it. When Neil asks Louis, the kid lies through his teeth and says he only has water. The senior bursts out laughing, mocking Louie and basically calling him a waste of space for having such a weak element. Louie is confused, so Miliana explains that water only has Aqualade as an attack skill. It is usually just stuck in defense and support roles. Because of that, most people treat water like it is a joke compared to other elements. The bully keeps piling on, mocking Louie, and pointing out there has not been a single water grandmaster in history. He shouts at Louie to accept his life as a background character. And that is when Louie finally gets pissed off. Louie asks if the highest a water user can go is really just master. While the senior keeps laughing at him, Cain and Fay tell the guy to zip it. While the argument heats up, Jess approaches Derek to discuss how handling magic requires a hardened body, making endurance training the perfect solution. Students need to take hits on purpose to sharpen their mental focus and physical durability. Let's see if this friendly match turns out to be anything but friendly. He vows to personally prove how useless water magic is. Cain warns Louie that Jess is Sheath's brother and out for blood. It is clear he is aiming to crush Louie, knowing water attributes are not great at shielding the body from impact. Ready for whatever, Louie tells Derek that there is no such thing as a bad attribute. Amused, Derek asks if he is accepting. Louie says yes, vowing to fight the seniors and prove his point. Cain is worried sick, but Louie just tells him to stay calm. Derek starts the fight, reminding them that magic can only be used within the central area of the hall. Before they begin, he adds that dodging is strictly forbidden, which only makes Neil burn with even more hype. Neil asks for a piece of the action, but the seniors reject him because of his dual powers. Instead, one senior steps up to face Louie, planning to school the kid. He activates his magic to form earth armor, then lunges at Louie with clear, murderous intent. Suddenly, a heavy fist connects with his face and sends him slamming into the floor. The crowd is totally stunned, wondering how Neil managed to shatter that ultimate earth armor and deal so much damage with just one single hit. Seeing the carnage, Jess orders the other seniors to swarm Neil. This only gets Neil excited, so he rips his shirt off and starts tanking their blows like a beast. After taking the hits, he calls them light work and tells the seniors they are all way too weak. In a flash, he grabs one guy by the leg and swings him around like a club, tossing him away. The rock guy jumps just in time and shouts that Neil's back is open. He punches Neil hard, thinking he has finally got the upper hand. But to his horror, his armor shatters and he screams in agony as blood sprays from his broken wrist. He calls it a mosquito bite. Trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. Alright, you and I are diving into a clash where magic and brute force collide. He can't believe Neil, a fresh awakener, is already controlling mana like a pro. Neil slams him into the wall. Derek uses the fallen student as a lesson for the freshmen, warning them never to forget their basics. Louie watches in horror, but there is no time to think because the upperclassmen are charging in. Fay, Cain, and Miliana jump in, matching the attacker's element for element. With the chaos erupting, Louie faces Jess, who is absolutely fuming that a freshman thinks he is the main character. Jess vows on his family name to teach this brat the meaning of noble pride and manners. He lunges forward, firing a lethal wind arrow right at Louis's face. Louie condenses water into a solid ice shield, blocking the shot and forcing Jess to retreat immediately. Jess looks down at his hand, trembling as he realizes it has been frozen solid. In total shock, Jess asks if this is water magic. Louie confirms it is just a specialized technique. Miliana and the others are stunned. They have never seen ice magic used like this before. Stick with me here, because this is where the tension hits a massive boiling point for our noble heir. He smirks at Neil. Neil charges full tilt, but Jess is way too fast, baiting him into a wild chase that leaves Neil crashing every time. Finally, Cain kicks Neil away, telling the hothead he needs to cool down. Jess slips past and heads for Louie. Neil follows, trying to crush him with a massive, Hulk-style leap. Jess and Louie both dodge. Suddenly, Neil spins around and tries to nail Louie with a savage roundhouse kick. Thankfully, Louie reacts just in time, blocking the blow with another layer of ice. Louie calls out Jess for his shameless sneak attack, which definitely does not match that noble pride talk. Jess doesn't care. He says winning is what matters. Neil leaps to strike again, nearly hitting Louie as he lands. Jess goes for a dropkick, but Neil just swats him out of the air. As Jess hits the dirt bleeding, Neil asks why he doesn't understand that teamwork is the best strategy. With Jess down, Neil turns his fury on Louis, but our main character evades every single strike. Now pay attention, because even the instructors are starting to realize Neil is a combat genius. Louie catches Neil's fist and lands a sharp blow to his throat, targeting his biggest weakness. As Neil gasps for breath, Fay screams at Louis for using such a dangerous, life-threatening strike. During the distraction, Neil grabs Louis's arm and delivers a brutal headbutt, calling him nothing but an insect. Louie tries to remind him that school rules forbid intentionally hurting others like this. But since Neil has crossed the line, Louie is finally getting serious. He freezes Neil's hands, but Neil just laughs, saying he is not going to hide from the pain. The ice begins to envelop Neil as Louie asks if he wants something tougher. Fuming with pure rage, Neil tells him that he does not even need to ask that question. The pain is intense, but Neil's flames erupt, shattering the ice completely. He punches his own arm, claiming that fighting Louie is actually making him much stronger. He remembers being attacked by wolves as a kid. That was the first time he felt pain. He ripped them to shreds with his bare hands, fueled by raw, primitive strength. That is when he realized pain is proof of life, and the ultimate catalyst for power. He believes only the strong survive, and he is starving for more. He lunges at Louis like a monster. He brings down his glowing, magic-enhanced fists. Louie parries the blow, sending Neil crashing before landing a solid kick right to his face. Neil stands back up immediately, begging for more of those deadly combos. Fay and Cain try to intervene before someone dies, but Neil tells them to stay back. Louie needs to stop this guy without breaking rules, so he decides to freeze him solid. You and I are left wondering if this ice tempest will finally end the madness. Let's see how Neil handles being smashed into this massive ice barrier. Neil ignores the pain, igniting his flame magic and tightening his muscles to channel all that damage into an explosive counter. Derek just watches, clearly amused. He is waiting for some drama, as Neil struggles back to his feet, ready for round 2. Suddenly, Kylie appears and decks Neil hard, calling him a meathead who went too far. Derek spots her and immediately freezes. He starts acting like a total fanboy, but she shuts him down, warning him that his reckless teaching could have killed a student. He whines about her harsh words being so cold. Then he claims he would have stepped in if needed, saying he only wanted to see their true potential. She just glares, reminding him she was specifically assigned to protect Louis for a very good reason. Before leaving, she tells Derek that Aronian wants him in his office right now. Derek knows he is in for a lecture, but wonders just how strong these freshmen can actually get. He tells Neil to get dressed, warning him that next time he goes wild, he is losing his school credits. Neil is just depressed he could not tank a master's hit and that he is going broke replacing his clothes. He decides he will hunt monsters for some quick cash, just as the class bell finally rings. The seniors are dismissed while the freshmen stay back for some potions. Stick with me here, because Cain is about to drop some lore about freshmen beating their seniors that changes everything. Louie has no clue since he is no nerd. Cain explains it has only happened 3 times in their 100-year history. And every time it happened, that freshman class produced legendary grandmasters. The most recent time, it was back when their fathers were students. As Jess and his lackey leave, the underling plots to take out Neil and Lewis in the shadows. But Jess calls the freshmen geniuses and praises his follower for his loyalty. He tells him there is no rush because they will have plenty of chances for payback. Geniuses or not, they are still just commoners. And as nobles, Jess plans on controlling their entire future. Later that day, Fay and Miliana discuss the incredible talent Lewis has for water magic. Fay suggests that if Miliana stays close to Lewis, she will definitely become much stronger. Miliana admits his techniques are so bizarre that it is impossible for anyone to copy them. She needs better water attacks, but Fay tells her to relax since she is still quite young. But Miliana stays determined, knowing she has to push herself for her family's sake. Fay, knowing her friend too well, suddenly calls out to Lewis for her. You saw that coming, right? Everyone thinks a confession is about to happen. Louie walks over a few seconds later, asking Miliana if she needs anything from him. Fay asks him to teach Miliana that water magic from earlier, and he happily agrees because they are friends. Miliana warns him that she might bring him trouble, asking if he will regret being friends with her. Louie promises never to betray his friends, but she just nods, not wanting to drag him into her mess. Then she just bolts away. As Fay chases her, Lewis realizes everyone has secrets, but his might be the most dangerous. He asks Cain for info, learning that Miliana is the granddaughter of a legendary grandmaster from the Royce family. Back when her grandmother was alive, the Royce family was thriving, but since she passed away, they have lost everything. He tells Louie to ask Fay for more. Louie asks Kara instead, who reveals the Royce family is deeply connected to the association. Lewis is intrigued, but realizes he will have to hear the full story from Fay or Miliana herself later. Eventually, they all head to the first magic training ground. Their new instructor, Sid, begins a lecture on how magic is a divine blessing and the essence of life. And that's where we leave it. Why do you and I think Louie is sighing? Let us dive into this school drama where Louie thinks his teacher hates him. Right on cue, Sid appears and snaps at him for talking in class. He docks a credit immediately, making it clear he is not soft like Derek. Interruption leads to 0 credits. As Sid heads back to his lecture, he burns Louie again, docking another point. He tells Louie to start acting like a proper noble and a respectful student. Sid then channels his power, summoning a massive statue made entirely of earth. He explains that real combat requires mastering both raw magic and martial arts to succeed. Mana surges through his hand as he tells the class that true apprentices must manifest their energy into weapons. Once they can wrap their bodies in arcane armor, they officially become fighters. Suddenly, his mana solidifies, taking the sharp form of a sword. He swings, teaching them to synchronize their bodies and minds to channel power through movement. The blade of mana slices right through the statue, leaving the students speechless. Now pay attention, because this is where the real competition starts. Sid tells them they will soon attack the statues themselves. The one who deals the most damage wins 5 credits, but first, they must group up by attribute. Neil gets a pass thanks to his dual attributes. Sid then orders students with water attributes to step aside, practice their armor, and prepare to help with the class warm-ups. As Cain leaves his team, the other students mock Louie and Miliana for having the weakest element. Miliana is crushed. She is stuck with support spells while everyone else gets to show off their power. She wants to prove herself to someone special, but at this rate, she will never be able to help that person reach Grandmaster status. Louie listens, wondering if this mysterious person is from the Arcanist Association. When he asks her about it, she just shakes her head and tells him it is none of his business. Curious, he asks why she is so focused on offense when water is naturally built for support. He explains how vital it is to protect allies and disrupt the enemy. Miliana snaps back that she must restore the Royce family name by mastering both attack and defense. She believes the goddess would not create an incomplete attribute, and that powerful water attacks must exist. She has tried potions and multi-hit spells, but water simply lacks the raw firepower to compete with other elements. As she doubts if a water user can ever reach the rank of Grandmaster, a classmate calls her over, demanding she use her aqua shield to help him warm up. Moments later, she blocks his wind strike with a solid wall of water. Watching this, Louie realizes Miliana is exactly like he was in his past life. You and I can see the same fire in her eyes. Back then, people mocked him for studying martial arts since his asthma made it impossible for him to actually train. The bullies told him to give up on his impossible dreams and just die already. Seeing her fight against the odds, he wonders if he can guide her toward a new path, just like he did for Cain. He steps forward, helping her manifest ice that sends the bully running. He tells her he believes in water's true potential and asks her to watch his next move. She blushes at how close he is. To prove he is serious, Louie asks Sid for a shot at the statue. Sid warns him that failing to leave a mark will cost him even more credits. He looks down on Louie, suggesting he stick to mana control, and asks if he is planning to use ice again. Louie claims he has found a much better way to boost the lethality of water magic attacks. The other students burst out laughing, convinced that such a thing is impossible. Even Miliana warns him that the statues are rare artifacts made of ore and reinforced with powerful earth magic. She is terrified he will lose all his credits, but he just pats her shoulder and says he has a plan. He walks right up to the statue and scoops up a handful of sand. He realizes these people do not understand that the softest things can overcome the hardest. Trust me, you and I are about to witness the moment he uses high pressure and speed to turn simple sand into a weapon. In a flash, he shreds the statue with high-pressure water blades. The students stand there confused until the statue suddenly collapses into perfect slices. Even Sid is losing his mind, seeing a reinforced statue get carved up like sashimi. Louie casually tells them, that is just the power of water magic. Stick with me, we are about to see this journey get even more intense. Cain starts roasting Sid, telling Louie and Kara how he turned ghost white after seeing that impossible move. After coughing up 5 credits to Lewis, Sid practically teleported out of the room the second class ended. Louie just shrugs it off, saying he was too focused on his water training to notice Sid's reaction. Cain suggests they tell Fay about Louise's water magic. She has been desperate to help Miliana, even spending a fortune on expensive mental recovery items to find a new path. Apparently, Fay is planning to rent out the training room for extra practice, which would be the perfect opportunity for Louie. Kara casually mentions that renting the room is 30 silver, while that high-tier recovery magic costs a massive 300 gold coins. Louie is floored by the price tag. He asks Kara for a favor, since they have a big training mission coming up in a few days. The day arrives. Now pay attention, because this mission is where the real action begins for our team. Derek is impressed by their stats and says it is time for their first academy mission. They are meeting up right on the edge of the Great Forest. Derek explains how the academy is actually linked to these woods. It used to be crawling with high-level monsters, but now it mostly just serves as a border between nations. Dangerous beasts still lurk inside. The deeper you go toward the center, the more terrifying the monsters become. But out here on the edge, things are much safer. He reveals the academy was built here to shield the Empire from these monsters. That is why students are sent in periodically to thin out the herd during training. He adds that any magic crystals they find can be traded for credits and rewards. Plus, the student with the most loot gets a bonus. But if they get cocky and need Derek to save them from a high-level fight, they will lose a credit point. While Neil gets ready for the hunt, Louie decides it is time to cut loose. He tells Fay he wants to use this real combat to train Miliana, since nothing brings out a person's true power like a life or death fight. Because of that, he suggests they form a 5-person team. They already have great teamwork, and this is way cheaper than paying to rent out a training room. Fay checks with Miliana, who is totally down. Derek tells them they are up first, but they will be heading in with a group of seniors. It is a solid chance to learn from the seniors' experience and pick up some new tricks. I knew it, these seniors are actually Jess's crew. They start acting tough, warning Lewis's team that the forest is deadly and they better keep their eyes peeled if they want to stay alive. Louie tells Jess not to sweat it. After all, you only grow when you are staring danger in the face. Insulted, Jess calls him a cocky brat. He storms off into the woods, telling his crew not to lift a finger to help Louie if things get ugly. Cain warns Louie that Jess can't mess with them directly since the teachers are always watching. Instead, Jess will try to bait them deeper into the forest to force them into a fight with high-level monsters. Louie just sees this as a big payday, so he agrees. Cain calls him a piece of work. A few minutes later, as they enter the woods, Louie realizes they are in behemoth territory. He wonders if any of those beasts are still around, but Cain says the Saints wiped out all the behemoths long ago. Out here on the forest outskirts, they will only run into fighter-class monsters. He asks Louie if he is ready to take some on. One senior scoffs, saying it usually takes a whole squad of fighters to bring down one fighter-class beast. He feels insulted, thinking these freshmen are completely delusional if they think they can handle one on their own. Right then, a fighter-class grand bear slams down in front of them. The senior just leaps onto a branch, telling the freshman he will just watch while they handle it. Looking closer, the senior realizes this bear is actually a freakishly strong version of its class. Louie gives the signal. Everyone drops into their stances as the bear lets out a deafening roar. Stick with me, let's see if they can survive this massive beast. They charge in, using wind magic to dodge those deadly claws. Alright. You and I are jumping right into a battle where the main character's speed means nothing against a literal wall of fur. It tries to swat him, but Cain evades with ease. Before it can follow up, Kara unleashes a massive wave of flames. Now the bear is furious, but Miliana uses water magic to bind the beast before hurling it deep into the forest. Fay explains it is a secret technique combining water magic with the ancient art of jujitsu. Hyped up, Louie rushes underneath the beast, refusing to let his friends have all the fun. He launches the bear into the sky, then compresses water into a high-pressure blast like a literal raging gun. It hits with lethal precision, and just like that, the monster is dead. The party is stunned that Louie killed it in one shot, especially since other elemental attributes were barely scratching its hide. He compressed heated water until the pressure was so high that it literally detonated on impact. This creates a superheated blast that burns internal organs and crushes the target's ability to breathe. He notes that even the toughest skin cannot defend against internal destruction. As Miliana wonders if she can pull off the move, Louie hands her enchanted rings from his trading company, explaining that with these, she can finally master other elements. After watching Sid, Louie realized he could finally start using his diverse powers out in the open. Just as Miliana puts the ring on, a sudden fireball streaks directly toward her head. It barely misses, vaporizing the bear instead. The upperclassmen can only watch in absolute terror as the beast is instantly charred to a crisp. Now pay attention, because the real nightmare is just starting to show its face as multiple blaze kongs begin heading their way. Cain calls them bad news, while Louie asks for a quick rundown on these new monsters. Cain explains that these creatures have no business being this close to the academy. It is a terrifying sight as the massive pack of blaze kongs reveals themselves and starts hungrily devouring the bear's remains right in front of them. Cain realizes other students are likely being hunted by these monsters across the entire forest. Terrified students are running for their lives as the blaze kongs corner them. Derek is busy saving fallen students, while Neil cracks his knuckles, preparing to go head-to-head with a giant blaze kong in a brutal fight. Sid finally arrives, telling everyone to evacuate while he takes care of the situation himself. Louie still cannot figure out why these high-level monsters are appearing at the forest edge. Suddenly, one appears right behind Brian, who desperately tries to shield himself with earth armor. The Kong smashes him into the dirt, shattering his earth armor and leaving him trembling from the weight of the immense pain. As it goes for the finishing stomp, Louie appears out of nowhere with a massive dropkick. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, splitting up? That's usually where things go south, but Louie knows they have to protect the others. Before retreating, Miliana prays for their safe return. They promise to survive, but the monster recovers and charges up a massive flame cannon. Louie shouts for them to move, and they dive for cover. Realizing they need teamwork, Cain uses a wind arrow to propel himself forward, slicing the monster's arm as it roars and screams in agonizing pain. Fay follows up, slamming the Kong into the ground with a fire-infused strike. She doesn't stop there, activating her secret moon lance to deliver a flurry of devastating stabs and strikes on the monster's massive body. Seeing its core exposed, she fires one final lance through its chest. The explosion shatters the core and kills the beast. Fay poses, but Cain warns her that they cannot afford to let their guard down yet. Right on cue, another blaze kong appears behind her and fires its flame cannon. Louie blocks the blast with an ice shield, then traps the monster in a massive frozen prison. Fay thanks him, but she's shocked when the monster starts moving inside the ice. It blasts free, forcing Louie to shove Fay aside. To their horror, the monster's wounds begin to close up instantly. Louie gets a bad feeling, realizing this healing power is exactly like Neil's back then. Somewhere else, Neil is trading blows with an ape, regenerating his own wounds just as fast. Derek realizes the students are in grave danger since these monsters simply refuse to stay dead and keep regenerating their lethal wounds. Louie's unit huddles together as the monsters close in. And trust me, you and I can feel the tension rising. Near the forest outskirts, Kara and Miliana are suddenly knocked unconscious by the monsters. Alright, you and I are about to watch Brian wake up and smirk, claiming his preparations are complete. He plans to use these defective monsters to eliminate Louie once and for all. Suddenly, the monsters activate arcane armor, leaving Cain absolutely stunned. As they strike, the group splits up, but Louie realizes every single creature is locked onto him, and he's not sure why. And making things even worse, the blaze kongs charge their massive flame cannons and fire simultaneously right at Louie. His friends scream his name as a massive explosion rocks the forest, and Brian celebrates a successful kill. Derek and Neil feel the blast, but suddenly, a blue light erupts, and a whirlwind tears right through the flames. Cain and Fay realize it's Louis, who just shielded himself with a massive barrier of water. Blown away by his control, Fay tells Cain that Louie is using master-level techniques he'd been hiding all along. He begins accelerating monocirculation inside his body, using it to temporarily reach master-tier mana control, but pay attention, the strain is huge, so he must end this fight immediately. Louie compresses a water ball, firing a massive stream that blasts the apes before freezing the ground solid. He then launches himself forward using ice, charging an ape at high speed before burying a fist in it, letting ice erupt and kill the beast. Another beast attacks, but as soon as Louie touches the ground, he creates an ice boost to dodge. The monster hits the floor and realizes its arm is already frozen. Louie weaves through them, forming an 8 trigrams formation, leaping up and firing palm strikes until the monsters are frozen and shattered to bits. Losing the apes, Brian gets a migraine and confirms his theory. Fay and Cain are stunned as Louie wipes out the pack instantly. Defeating them, Louie feels his wind and mana control finally leveling up. Cain rushes over to praise him, but Fay warns they need to leave before an ambush happens. Louie says the teachers are here. The teachers show up, and Brian hits himself in frustration, annoyed that Louie got lucky this time. Aronian arrives and sees the collapsed students around the forest. He finds Louie's group and asks if they're safe. They tell him Louie took down masterclass monsters alone, and they'd be dead without him. Aronian is curious, especially when Louie says something feels off. He shows the frozen monster parts, and Aronian tells them to head back while the staff handles things. Later, the shopkeeper praises Louie's credits and wishes she'd gone too. She asks why he's buying so many recovery potions, since overusing them can wreck his body. Louie says he knows, but Kylie suddenly appears and asks to talk to him in private. They step outside together. She reveals the principal found drugs and modifications inside those monster corpses. You and I know it, this incident was definitely triggered intentionally. Enemy forces are probing the academy, likely because the king is old and hasn't named an heir yet. She feels that it's the perfect time for rivals to take out candidates and manipulate their children. Since the academy is a major power in the empire, their position is exactly what these forces are probing. Louie remembers the monsters targeting him specifically, making him doubt it's just about the throne. Kylie promises to keep investigating and tells him to keep growing to meet the principal's high expectations. Louie downs a potion and vows to get stronger than ever before. Trust me, as he joins his friends, we know he won't be slowing down. Alright, you and I are diving back into a world where modified monsters are just the start of the nightmare. Brian meets his father, Prince Vaughn, reporting that their experiments showed improved combat stats but still missed the mark. He clarifies that most of the failed subjects had to be destroyed through self-detonation, but the academy salvaged some remains, and Brian worries that Principal Aronian is starting to smell a rat. His father calmly explains that the subjects actually came from the Born Empire. If Aronian finds out, well, that's a problem far beyond their own control anyway. More importantly, Vaughn stares at a photo of Louie, calling him the child of the curse. He's had his suspicions for a while, and now that he's felt his terrifying aura, he's sure the principal is hiding the kid's true identity. Brian is furious, calling Louie a massive threat to their endgame, but his father just lets the photo burn. He asks if Brian bothers stepping around ants when he walks, but Brian warns him that Louie is the disaster child destined for ruin. Before he can finish his rant, the old man cuts him off. Louie isn't someone they need to fear. Instead, he orders Brian to leak all info on Louie to the association high-ups. Once Brian confirms it's the Arcanist Association, his dad reveals they'll use those so-called advocates of the goddess to finish the job. After all, it's their holy duty to wipe out a child of the curse, right? Vaughn's golden rule? Solve your messy problems without ever getting a single drop of blood on your own hands. Back at the academy training grounds, trust me, you're going to want to watch this. Louie is meditating, and as Cain strikes, he evades the blades like he's reading his mind. Cain backs off, letting Fay step in to fire a flame arrow, but Louie is already one step ahead with an ice barrier. He leaps back from the explosion, but immediately senses another strike coming. He freezes the ground with his foot to stop it, only for the trap to explode right in his face. Fay and Cain think they've finally won, but Miliana warns them that Louie has likely already decoded their entire strategy. Sure enough, Louie walks out of the smoke, praising their teamwork. He tells Cain his hit-and-run tactics are looking sharp. He notices Fay boosted her spear by adapting their unarmed strike patterns. And finally, Miliana tried to hide Kara's item with mud. He says he only noticed because of his enhanced cold element senses. Without those instincts, he would have been toast. Cain is frustrated that they still can't land a single solid hit on him. He sighs, admitting they just can't keep up. Fay is stunned that Louie can sense everything through his chi, but Louie brushes it off, explaining it's just a technique involving the flow of mind and mana. He's still refining the process but promises to walk them through it during their next session. Kara hands him a recovery potion. As he drinks, she suddenly mentions that it feels like Louie belongs to another world. That comment makes Louie nearly choke. He spits out his drink, asking exactly why she would think that. Now stick with me, because Kara's reasoning is actually pretty sharp. She notices that Louie shares his secrets openly instead of hoarding them. Louie plays it cool, saying he's just a commoner and they all learn from each other equally, so there's no mystery there. He tells them that otherworld stuff doesn't apply to him, and it's better if they all just grow stronger together. Fay kills the mood, reminding everyone they need to sleep since martial arts class starts first thing tomorrow. She also warns Louie not to pull any all-nighters, because she hates when people secretly try to outpace the rest of the group. With that, they bid Louie goodbye. Once they're gone, Louie checks his recovery stash and realizes he's running low. He picks one up to take a gulp, but Kylie suddenly appears right at his side to stop him. She asks what he's doing, pointing out that he already took one just yesterday. She warns him that abusing these mental recovery potions will eventually turn his brain into total mush. Louie looks at the bottle, remembering his oath to become a grandmaster just to save his orphanage from the greedy association. He thinks about how hard he's worked to get here and the brutal challenges he still has to face. He tells Kylie he has a mission to complete, and for that, he needs more power. He promises to be careful not to overdo things, so she shouldn't worry too much. Deep down, Louie knows these potions let him double his training efficiency. He doesn't have the luxury of taking it slow. He downs it instantly. As Kylie asks if he's absolutely sure about his choice, something begins to shift. You and I are about to see things get dangerous. An ominous red aura erupts from Louie's body, forcing Kylie to summon her armor and prepare for battle. Alright, you and I are about to see Louie realize his mana is suddenly flowing smoother than ever before. Kylie tries to ignore the weird vibe, but then she checks the potion box and sees a pile of empty bottles. She totally loses it, demanding to know if he drank every single one himself. Left with no other choice, he shyly admits it, and the records confirm this is his 8th time swapping for potions this month. Absolutely fuming, she realizes Louie has been chugging at least 2 potions every single day. In his defense, Louie tells her this is the only way to become a grandmaster fast. Plus, he feels fine. Kylie screams that reaching grandmaster takes more than drugs, it takes mastering the basics first. She is convinced his body is actually a wreck inside. That creepy feeling from earlier still has her worried. Pay attention here, she plans to tell Aronian everything, and immediately drags him out of the room. They head straight to the testing labs to run a full check and see if he is dying. At the principal's office, Aronian takes a blood sample to test against recovery potions, but surprisingly, he finds 0 signs of damage. In fact, his blood looks even more energetic. Kylie insists Louie is acting super weird and spacing out. She even mentions the terrifying, monster-like killing intent she felt radiating from him just a moment ago. Aronian shares her concerns, but seeing that mana boost, he wonders if the potions triggered some enlightenment. He also considers if this is just another trait of being the cursed child. He notes that the price of mana is a divine rule that neither humans nor monsters can bypass. He decides not to rush to conclusions, since there is still so much they do not understand. Kylie is still worried that something is deeply wrong with the main character's body, but Aronian walks off, claiming alchemy and potionology are still new fields with many unknown side effects. Since Louie is a special case, it is even harder to tell. Kylie asks if he has more secrets, but he just notes that modern alchemy clashing components together is likely causing these big issues. Now, if they strip away the junk to make a purer drug, they might find the problematic ingredient. After sharing his theory, they gather massive amounts of equipment. Louie is amazed by Aronian's vast influence. Kylie asks what he is doing with the bottles, since they usually aren't needed for brewing. He simply tells her he will explain everything once he is finished. I know what you're thinking, but wait, Louie begins extracting every single ingredient from the potion one by one. Aronian is completely stunned by his precision. He suggests Louie study under him, believing he will eventually become a top authority and surpass even Miran. Louie agrees, and a happy Aronian pats him on the back, promising double points. Kylie remains suspicious, wondering if this guy even has a single weak point. Later, Louie reads up on potions and learns they come from plants that need soil and water. Realizing earth and water represent life, the room suddenly glows, leaving Aronian and Kylie in total shock. Aronian calls it a moment of enlightenment, as Louie begins creating living plants just by thinking. Aronian is speechless, calling it the literal power of creation. Louie explains he just combined fertile soil with moisture to sprout new life. He calls it wood element. Curious, Kylie tries to touch a vine, but the plant bites her and several more charge at her. Terrified, she blasts them with fire, leaving the remaining plants shaking in fear of her. Shocked that he can weaponize plants, she cannot believe how fast his power is growing. To top it off, Louie shows them the wood attribute's greatest strength healing magic. Aronian is floored, realizing that recovery potions might actually be linked to this wood power. Louie confirms that the secret is whether the plant contains the elements. Aronian processes this new knowledge and promises to supply Louie with all the materials he needs. Louie thanks him but says not to bother. He will be brewing everything himself. He mentions that strength is only one factor in their world. Trust me, you and I must see if he can change his fate. Alright, you and I are diving in as Louie follows Aronian deep into the Academy's hidden cavern. Aronian is deeply impressed and finds the whole thing amusing, admitting that no matter how often he sees it, rare plants growing that fast is unreal. Louie explains that rare plants drain massive mana, and he is finally hitting his limit. Aronian simply nods, reminding him that in their world, every ounce of power has a price. Looking at the harvest, he tells Louie that the price he is paying is actually a total steal. He realizes Louie didn't just purify the potions to reduce side effects, but actually applied wood magic to create new ones. He calls Louie a genius, the only one capable of this feat, as the boy checks his special brew. Now pay attention, because Aronian knows exactly what Louie needs to get stronger, a real fight. He offers himself as the opponent, and Louie agrees instantly, telling him to come at him full force. He chugs his potions and charges at Aronian, resulting in an impact so violent it triggers a massive explosion. Kylie watches from the sidelines, calling Louie an absolute monster. Later, while showering, Louie realizes Aronian didn't hold back at all without those potions. He would be bedridden for a whole month. Just then, he spots Kara staring intensely at a small patch of spilled potion. Thinking fast, he lies and claims the principal gave him the special liquid. It is the cover story Aronian suggested, but Kara is not buying it, moving closer to accuse him of making it while Louie tries to deny it. Louie finally gives in and asks how he knew about it, and Kara tells him that the principal is simply far too old-fashioned. Louie admits Kara sees through everything and begs him to keep this a total secret. The mute boy reaches into his shirt and pulls out a contract with some incredibly good terms. Through cryptic parables, Louie realizes that using a trading company will keep his identity as the creator completely hidden. Kara handles the sales and protects Louie's name. A deal Louie internally agrees is much safer for everyone. He adds his own conditions. They must weaken the effects first to avoid attracting any unwanted attention. Second, the candy trading company has to provide full support to the Rashira orphanage. Kara snatches the paper and signs it instantly. The deal of a lifetime is officially sealed. Impressed, Louie shakes his hand and offers some pro-business advice to help their new company thrive. After a quick briefing, he heads to his room, promising the potions will be ready tomorrow and wishing Kara good night. But once Louie is gone, Kara lets down her hair, looking like a surprisingly beautiful girl. Moments later, two birds fly in and shift into beastkins, waiting for Kara to finish in the bathroom. One tries to pounce on Kara, but gets whacked over the head, falling to the floor in pain. The beast lady whines about the hit, begging for just a little cuddle after sneaking inside. The other apologizes, knowing they have to keep this visit short to avoid being caught. Okay, you saw that too, right? Kara's towel drops, revealing she has been a lady this entire time. She hands them the contract, and they scream, thinking she's lost her mind by favoring Louie so much. But they quickly realize if this plan works, their company will become one of the top firms in the region. They call Kara a genius, but she admits the entire strategy actually came from Louie. They are shocked that someone so young could even conceive of such a massive, grandiose plan. Kara simply sees his potential, though they worry he might eventually betray her for a different heir. She asks for one more favor. She needs to bring the Rashira orphanage under her direct control. Hearing about Louie's selfless condition, they admit the kid is almost too kind. With the meeting over, Kara dismisses them and they fly back to their secret base. Looking out the window, she notes midterms are coming, and she will need to move her plan along, wanting Louie to show her his true potential. A few days pass, and the dreaded midterm exams finally begin. Professor Deredick addresses the students, wanting to see their growth through the corridor of traps, where martial arcane is forbidden while they face endless monsters. He mentions that in the Academy's history, not one person has ever completed a perfect run. Fay goes first and fails, but she still manages to score 300 points. You and I see Cain hit 320 and Kara get 289, while Neil leads with 325. Trust me, you and I are about to witness an absolute legend. Derek vows to work them to death next term, even as another teacher notes their foundations are getting solid. He admits he has taken a liking to Louie, while the examiner notices Aronian is keeping a close eye too. The man thinks 500 is an amazing score, but Derek knows Louie is much stronger than that. He is so sure that he bets Louie will break 600 points. He stakes a 10-year bottle of booze on it, and the other teacher agrees. Meanwhile, onlookers talk trash, certain Louie will fail since even the noble students could not pull it off. Just then, Louie enters the room and multiple high-intensity beams fire straight at his position. He activates the void algorithm to scan the area before his muscles react to dodge every single shot. He leaps to safety, and when the floor drops, he uses a mid-air boost to avoid the pit. But right after landing, a giant slime falls on him, and he realizes he has a fight on his hands. The beast fires slimes at Louie, but he deflects them into another room where they get crushed like bugs. Without giving him a second to breathe, multiple cannons lock on and fire. Now watch this, as Jet slimes home in from the opposite side. He leaps away, letting the two attacks collide and explode into each other. Louie realizes he is processing a lot of data, but as long as he sees the core, he can win. With the math complete, he lands in a safe zone and spots the best path to avoid the barrage. He follows it with perfect timing, looking like he has future sight and shocking the confused teacher. Watching him, the man realizes Louie is not just dodging, he is taking out the monsters and traps at the same time. Derek tells the man he has not seen anything yet because Louie might just break the all-time record. Louie keeps moving forward, dodging every attack and treating the whole thing like a training session. When he tries to deflect one strike, it slips past, and he realizes just how fast it moves. The attack transforms into echobats, which the teacher calls the most agile monsters on the entire planet. He concludes that no matter how talented Louie is, physical ability alone will not be enough to break the record. Louie just slams his foot down and uses a mana chain to grab the debris flying into the air. He launches them at the bats, striking some while the others manage to flutter away. To finish it, Louie closes in and starts physically whacking the monsters right out of the sky. You and I just saw history. He finishes with a massive 999 points, leaving every single student in the audience absolutely stunned by his incredible performance. He is officially granted the highest rank. This infuriates the nobles who swear to pound him into the dirt during the practical combat test. The examiner is stunned by that perfect score, while Derek reminds him to get that booze ready. The man is absolutely fuming, swearing that he hates making bets. Louie's friends rush over to congratulate him on clearing the entire thing without using any magic. Fay is very impressed but still vows to beat him in a one-on-one duel someday. Neil walks past in total silence, making Cain wonder if he finally realizes the gap between them. Louie thinks it is the opposite, sensing the dark power of demonic blood coming from Neil. With the technical phase over, Derek announces that it is time for the practical combat portion. He tells them to draw their numbers and go all out, knowing they have been waiting for this. Jess is hyped, hoping to get matched with a junior so he can give them some direct guidance. He reaches into the box, and his magical ring automatically picks out a card. He figures Louie is a troublesome guy, so he plans to hit him when he is already worn down. Louie and his friends draw their lots and realize they are all in completely different brackets. That means they won't meet until the finals. Though Fay warns Cain he has to beat her first. Cain is annoyed, but he is more curious about who ended up in Louie's group. Miliana reveals she is with Louie, knowing that they will eventually have to fight each other. So that's where we leave it. You and I are definitely going to want to see Louie take on these seniors in the final showdown. He gives Miliana tips. Let's see them work. Neil just smirks at his own pairing, while Jess gives a dark order exhaust Louise at any cost, even if his subordinates have to sacrifice their very lives to do it. Once the students finish drawing lots, Derek sets the brackets, and everyone finally sees exactly who they'll be facing in the opening round. Cain and Fay, watch this, it gets wild. Miliana faces her senior, while Neil takes on Louie. You and I are about to watch it all unfold as Derek starts the match.